Chapter 830 I'll go. Chapter 830 I'll go. You'll go? Talking was easy, but you were only in the deity transformation tier, so you'd be giving up by taking the field, no? This was no joke. If you were too weak, then let alone receiving one attack, you'd be annihilated with just the enemy's aura. Ma Duobao didn't believe in Ling Han's prowess, but believed in Ling Han as a person. He only frowned and said, "You sure?" "Sure." Ling Han nodded. "All right." Ma Duobao never did things sloppily. He immediately nodded and said, "You'll take the last match, Brother Han." Zhu Xian'er pulled on Ling Han's hand, worry painted all across her face. The opponent wasn't a normal person, but a genius from the divine realm that could look down on the older generation's elites. Even a super elite like the Lunar King couldn't rival him. Ling Han nodded and said, "Don't worry, I'll be fine." "Ling Han, do your best." Hu Niu waved her small hand, cheering for him. "Beat him up, don't give Uncle Rabbit any face," the rabbit shouted on the side. Ling Han walked out in large strides and said, "This battle, I've accepted." Pooh! On the side of the five sects, everyone couldn't help laughing loudly. You, a mere deity transformation tier warrior, actually wanted to participate in such a battle? Wasn't that seeking death? Not to mention shattering void tier 18 stars of battle prowess. A normal shattering void tier elite could easily swat him to death. Was this Purple Moon Empire's way of giving up? Indeed, Ma Duobao couldn't take the field, so whoever took the field would only suffer defeat. It was all the same no matter who it was. Beast Snake King's expression, however, changed as he said, "This child can't be underestimated. His defensive abilities are extremely strong." At least, when he'd swatted down with his palm, nothing happened to Ling Han. Such defensive abilities were truly terrifying. Because that matter was somewhat embarrassing, he never told anyone, and even made Su Xiu-ran keep his mouth shut, so now no one knew that Ling Han's physique was actually comparable to 10th tier rare metal. "You!" Wu Gaoyuan couldn't help but frown. "With my noble status, how could you be fit to fight me?" He felt as if he'd suffered a great humiliation. Purple Moon Emperor's court probably knew that they would lose, so they intentionally sent a deity transformation tier warrior to humiliate him. Damn it, too hateful. His eyes had an ominous glare. Since that was the case, he'd torment Ling Han, and see just how much face Ling Han would still have. "Cut the crap, bring it on!" Ling Han taunted him with his finger. Wu Gaoyuan already regained his composure, while the fury turned into a baleful murderous aura. He revealed a cruel smile and raised his hand. Instantly, a myriad of silver lights radiated and turned into countless sharp swords, shooting at Ling Han. "Let 10,000 swords pierce your heart." Ling Han didn't parry, and simply used his sword heart. Shwa, 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 the sharp swords all swept by his body all around him, yet didn't hurt a single hair. "Sword heart?" Wu Gaoyuan was slightly taken aback, and then laughed loudly. Not bad, to have actually comprehended the heart of martial arts. This is truly rare, even in our divine realm. Only 1 out of 10 shattering void tier elites can comprehend the heart of martial arts." "So few?" Ling Han said inwardly. The 8 kings all had the heart of martial arts, and quite a few in the 5 sects, like Sword King, Severing Heaven's Saber, and even Su Xiu-ran and Small Sword Emperor all formed the heart of martial arts. In terms of ratio, this was at least 1/10, and even surpassed it. But thinking again, it was actually normal. Although the divine realm was abundant with cultivation resources, that only allowed martial artists to reach the shattering void tier, and an even higher level, at a faster pace. Martial arts still had to be personally comprehended. Moreover, since the lower realm lacked in cultivation resources, those that could break through to the shattering void tier were all geniuses amongst geniuses, so the ratio of those comprehending the heart of martial arts would naturally be higher. "I'm somewhat interested." Wu Gaoyuan's killing intent was even more aroused. "It's only interesting to kill such a genius." Not bad, cultivating out sword heart at the deity transformation tier. You should be the first in the lower realm, right?" Su Xiu Ran and Small Sword Emperor revealed looks of disdain at the same time. They were only born in the lower realm. If they could receive the nourishment of the divine realm's cultivation resources, they definitely wouldn't be weaker than Wu Gaoyuan and the others. Ling Han reached out, hooked his finger at him, and said, "Is your zodiac a donkey? You are so chatty." A vein bulged on Wu Gaoyuan's forehead, and he said threateningly, "Infuriating me? There's no benefit to you at all. You're still blabbering?" Ling Han said disdainfully. "Fuck!" Wu Gaoyuan finally couldn't hold back, and unleashed a palm attack. It was still tens of thousands of swords fluttering, yet they were enhanced by a sword heart of his own. Their power was obviously stronger, no longer being affected by Ling Han's sword heart. The full-strength attack at Shattering Void tier 18 stars. How could it be blocked? It couldn't be blocked. Ping! Ling Han was immediately sent flying like a kite with a broken tail. Wu Gaoyuan snorted and said, "Is there a need to keep competing?" "Of course." Ling Han climbed up from the ground and exercised his joints. Pa pa pa, the bones all over his body crackled, his blood and chi boiling, soaring into the sky. This? Everyone stared dumbfounded. Was this guy a freak? Before, the Justice Mountain King was almost killed in a single hit, and only thanks to Ma Duobao intervening was the calamity avoided, but Ling Han had suffered such an attack, and was like nothing had happened at all. How could people believe this? He was only in the deity transformation tier, so how could he be so strong? This child's physique is comparable to 10th tier rare metal. A Shattering Void tier elite exclaimed. The other people of the 5 great sects finally understood, but still couldn't help but grimace. This guy was too freakish. A deity transformation tier warrior that possessed a physique similar to 10th tier rare metal and toughness, wouldn't that almost be invincible in the world? No wonder this guy dared to take the field. This nature-defying physique was equal to standing in an invincible position. 10th tier rare metal? Wu Gaoyuan sneered. So what? I'll refine it nevertheless. Ling Han flicked his finger and said, "Don't just bluff, come fight. If you can't beat me in 10 moves, then you lose. *T, you can't just go talking on your own." Wu Gaoyuan snorted and said, "Who promised you that? You, a Shattering Void tier elite, and one with 18 stars of battle prowess at that, fighting me, a deity transformation tier warrior, still complain that 10 moves aren't enough? How about I use only one hand against you?" Ling Han said with a smile. The people of the 5 great sects wrinkled their noses in anger. Your damn physique was like 10th tier rare metal, almost unharmable by outside forces, so who could beat you within 10 moves? Moreover, you're only at the deity transformation tier, and your battle prowess wouldn't even be worth mentioning in front of a Shattering Void tier elite, not to mention one hand. What would it even matter even if it were 4 hands? This brat was truly devious. Wu Gaoyuan was also quite furious. Now, he was really tired of talking to Ling Han, and charged right out, launching attacks at Ling Han. Shwa! He unleashed a treasured sword, its chilling glare shocking the skies. It was a 10th tier spirit tool, and was completely activated at this moment, so it was as if another Shattering Void tier elite had joined the battle. Ling Han was unafraid. He didn't plan on winning, and simply wanted to drag out the last battle into a draw. No matter whether you're 1 or 10 Shattering Void tier elites, I'll only guard and not attack, so come. Hong! 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 Wu Gaoyuan brandished the 10th tier spirit tool and slashed frenziedly at Ling Han like a demonic god. Chapter 831 Indestructible Body. Chapter 831 Indestructible Body. One had to know that the clash between a 10th tier spirit tool and another 10th tier spirit tool couldn't end up with both sides being completely unharmed. After a few clashes, it would indeed be fine, but after many, one side would definitely be damaged. And if the quality of both sides was almost the same, then both would be damaged. Thus, Ling Han's physique might be comparable to 10th tier rare gold, but it could still be wounded by a 10th tier spirit tool, even severed. Wu Gaoyuan's battle prowess was too powerful, and in a few slashes, Ling Han started to spill blood violently. Even 10th tier rare metal physique couldn't withstand it. Ha ha ha, tough guy, Why don't you talk tough again? He laughed loudly. This isn't tough talk, it's strength, Ling Han said indifferently, operating Indestructible Heaven's scroll, and the wounds immediately healed automatically. If these injuries weren't cut by a shattering void tier elite, then the diamond body could heal them on its own. Unfortunately, a shattering void tier elite's attack obviously included martial intent, which could obstruct the diamond body from self-recovery, and so the Indestructible Heaven's scroll had to be operated to expel Wu Gaoyuan's martial intent for the injuries to recover. At a shocking pace, he instantly recovered completely, his blood and qi as exuberant as if they could burn the skies. What? Seeing this scene, everyone was speechless. What the hell, what level of recovery ability was that? A formidable physique alone could be slowly refined if it couldn't be damaged, but such recovery ability on top of such a physique, then there would be no answer. Humph, such recovery ability, can you constantly use it? Wu Gaoyuan sneered. He wouldn't believe that Ling Han could limitlessly employ such a terrifying recovery ability. It definitely wouldn't be long before it would no longer be in effect. He attacked crazily, trying to force Ling Han to his limit. Everyone nodded. Such shocking recovery ability couldn't possibly be constantly maintained. It definitely exhausted an extreme amount of energy. Moreover, there was no need to wait for such recovery ability to disappear. As long as the recovery speed couldn't keep up with the destructive power, Ling Han would still die. However, beyond everyone's expectations, Ling Han stood up again and again. No matter which way the wind blew, he was like boulder, remaining unmoved. Wu Gaoyuan refused to buy it, believing all along that Ling Han would reach the limit in the next move, but he was disappointed over and over again. Ling Han stood up again and again. His strength was clearly stronger, and not just by a little bit, but by an absolutely overwhelming amount. However, encountering this freak, he had no way to defeat him for good, and could only strike him down continuously, yet couldn't see the possibility of killing him. The 8 kings finally revealed an exhilarated look. They originally thought that the 5 sects would get them this time, and true to their personalities, they definitely would keep their word and not sortie any soldiers in the following 100 years. Although nothing could be done, keeping a promise was obviously greater than anything else. This was truly an unexpected rescue from a desperate situation. Although Ling Han definitely couldn't win, as long as he didn't lose, this match would be a draw, and the entire wager would also be a draw. They obviously wouldn't need to keep the promise of not moving any troops in 100 years. Even Ma Duo Bao nodded slightly. He knew that Ling Han was remarkable, but had never expected him to be this remarkable. In contrast, on the side of the 5 sects, each and every one of their faces was gloomy. They intentionally gave the impression of weakness before, luring Ma Duo Bao into agreeing to the wager. Seeing that it would soon succeed, who would have expected that such a freak would come charging out? 9 battles ending in a draw. Would Ma Duo Bao agree not to take the field himself? Damn it, this damned brat. The 5 sects all hated Ling Han. If this battle really ended up in a draw, Ling Han would be the 5 sects' mortal enemy. Moreover, this child's cultivation was only in the deity transformation tier, so what if he crossed into the shattering void tier? Would there be anyone in the world that could suppress him? Wu Gaoyuan was driven mad. He was conceited. Divine Realm's genius obviously looked down on the people of the lower realm. This time, the 5 great divine sects paid a great price to send 5 shattering void tier elites down in order to turn the tides. But now, a mere deity transformation tier warrior stopped him. If this were to spread back to the divine realm, would he have any face to see people in the future? He brandished the treasured sword and kept slashing Ling Han, swearing to annihilate Ling Han into pieces. Futile! Ling Han wasn't an indestructible diamond body, so he would also be injured, but his rate of recovery made people speechless. Unless one had the ability to destroy Ling Han's vitals in one attack, Ling Han would never be defeated fighting on like this. Wu Gaoyuan already used all his strength. He had acquired the sword heart, but never reached the level of illumination, so when he attempted to destroy Ling Han's soul with sword heart, Ling Han wasn't weaker than him. He'd also reached sword heart, and would even soon reach great mastery. The two fought fiercely. 1 day passed, 2 days passed, and 3 days passed. Ling Han was injured countless times, but it couldn't be seen at all. The only change was the many sets of clothes that he swapped into. It couldn't be helped the indestructible Heaven's Scroll couldn't recover his clothes, and obviously a new set of clothes could only be changed when the other was torn. Although there's no time limit, the fight can't go on endlessly. Ma Duobao spoke up. Enough, this match ends in a draw. How could it possibly be a draw? The 5 sects were obviously unwilling to admit it, and said one after another. Wu Gaoyuan clearly has the absolute advantage. Having the advantage is the same as winning? The Lunar King sneered. Then, since Ling Han is only in the deity transformation tier, after being able to fight a shattering void tier opponent for 3 days, this king can say that Ling Han has won. Ma Duobao walked forward a few steps and said, This emperor says that this match is a draw. Who has any objections? I have. A person from the 5 sects jumped out. He was at the shattering void tier, but only the 3rd layer. Ma Duobao took a glance at him, and waved his right hand. Endless killing intent intertwined, and Pu, that shattering void tier elite was swept by a ball of light and instantly split into pieces, blood dripping and shaking the mountains. The shattering void tier elite actually couldn't stand up again, and his presence dispersed rapidly. He died. In one attack, an elite at the 3rd layer of the shattering void tier was killed, and separated by such a far distance, it was practically taking the general's head from hundreds of thousands of people as if taking something out of his pocket, easy and pleasant. This was Purple Moon Empire's #1 expert strength. Ma Duobao didn't take another glance, and simply said indifferently, Who else has objections? No one uttered a sound on the side of the 5 sects in the moment. Even those strong as Sui Qifeng and the 3 others didn't dare to resist Ma Duobao head-on. Shattering Void Tier 20 stars of battle prowess? Definitely. How could a human achieve Shattering Void Tier 20 stars of battle prowess? Even offsprings of divine beasts, descendants of saints, only a mere few can reach such heights. Damn it, if this were the divine realm, the sect could send anyone to kill him. Sui Qifeng and the 3 others communicated in soft voices. They were judging whether the 5 of them together could stop Ma Duobao. Even if they could, who would block the 8 kings? Wu Gaoyuan, take the axe! An old man with lightning flashing across the surface of the body threw an axe at Sui Qifeng fiercely. The mountain river axe? Not an imitation, but the true mountain river axe, with the realm power that created the axe's surface. Cutting down with this axe, would even 10th tier rare metal be directly cut in two? Chapter 832 Entering the Stage. Chapter 832 Entering the Stage. Mountain and river axe, created by the regulation powers of a realm, how astonishing would its destructive abilities be? Wu Gaoyuan took hold of the mountain and river axe, and immediately laughed loudly. This thing, in the immortal realm, could only be considered invincible in the shattering void tier, and definitely could not be proclaimed a god tool, but in this lower realm, it was definitely the strongest spirit tool, and there was no others that could match it. With this, how could he still survive? Ho ho, so shameless? Ma Duobao smirked coldly. He swept out a finger, and a deep mark immediately appeared between Ling Han and Wu Gaoyuan. A terrifying killing intent sword, and even for one of Wu Gaoyuan's might, he dared not cross over a single step. Your Majesty, what is the meaning of this? Could it be that you want to ruin our wager? The members of the 5 sects asked. They seemed to be polite, yet were in fact trapping Ma Duobao with their words. Ma Duobao said calmly, Since you have taken out even the mountain and river axe, then I will no longer be reserved with you either. He paused, and called out loudly, Ling Han, hand that sword over to me. That sword? Realization instantly dawned on Ling Han. That was the Revere Life Sword, and it had been personally forged by Ma Duobao's hands. Without hesitation, he summoned the Revere Life Sword out of the Black Tower with a wave of his right hand, and threw it over to Ma Duobao. He had not planned on using this sword previously. In front of battle prowess of 18 stars of Shattering Void Tier, even if the Revere Life Sword was completely revived, it was not of much use. Ma Duobao received the sword, and gave it a few light strokes. The patterns on the sword immediately lit up. Not only was it completely revived, it had also become much stronger. He chuckled, and threw the Revere Life sword back over to Ling Han. So powerful! Ling Han gripped the Revere Life sword, and a feeling of invincibility rose up in his heart. He felt that even if immortals descended, he would still be able to kill them. With another wave of the hand from Ma Duobao, the mark on the ground instantly vanished, and the killing intent was no longer present either. You're reading on novelful, thanks. Wu Gaoyuan gave a humph. Did Ling Han think that he would be able to stand against him just because he had a sword? His battle prowess was stronger than Ling Han's by who knew how many times, and now that the mountain and river axe was added into the equation, it was definitely not something difficult for him to cut Ling Han's body open. He once again charged out, slashing out at Ling Han. Ling Han waved his sword. Shua, the light of the sword gushed out, and killing intent boiled over. This strike was extremely frightening. Wu Gaoyuan did not have the powerful physique and recovery abilities that Ling Han had, so how could he possibly dare to take this strike head-on? He hurriedly brandished the mountain and river axe in a parry. Pun! A loud bang sounded, and killing intent overflowed. He actually failed to destroy Ling Han's attack. What? Everyone exclaimed in shock. That was the mountain and river axe, formed from the powers of an entire realm. Adding Wu Guiyuan's own strength, he should have been able to slice apart Ling Han's sword light with a single blow, and it itself could not have been blocked either. The gap was really much too big, after all. And yet, Wu Guiyuan's counter had actually been blocked. How could this be possible? What kind of sword is this? It could actually match the mountain and river axe. Wu Gaoyuan has 18 stars of Shattering Void tier of battle prowess. Added with the mountain and river axe, his battle prowess should have directly spiked up to 20 stars. But Ling Han managed to block him with just a sword. This is too ridiculous. Only the 8 kings wore prideful expressions. This sword was the work of their boss, one that was so strong that he had surpassed common sense. I don't believe it! Wu Guiyuan's whole head of black hair rose on ends. He gritted his teeth. He was a proud prodigy of the immortal realm, and was a whole 2 tiers superior to Ling Han. Furthermore, he was wielding a powerful weapon like the mountain and river axe. And yet, he couldn't even manage to deal with a mere deity transformation tier cultivator? Ling Han smiled faintly. Actually, the Revere Life sword had activated on its own, and his waving it around was merely for show. In truth, it should be said that it was the Revere Life sword that was ordering him around, and not he that was using the Revere Life sword. After Ma Duobao had done some tricks, this sword had not only activated, but had also become 10 times stronger than before. Just let the fight proceed then. Anyways, he was merely doing the action, but not exerting any real energy, so no matter how long the battle took, it would be fine. Tisk TSK, how lively! You don't mind if we join too, right? Another group of people walked out from the foot of the mountain, and every one of them looked incredibly strange. It was not that they had strange appearances, but that the aura they were exuding was very odd. Every one of them felt as if they had climbed out of a grave, eerie and frightening. This was not a misconception, because they were members of the Thousand Corpse sect. The 9th Underworld King, Corpse Boss, Corpse 2, as well as Rong Huan Xian. Why was this guy together with the Thousand Corpse sect? Both Ling Han and Wu Gaoyuan stopped. There would be no meaning even if they continued their battle. Ma Duobao's eyes swept over them. He asked, So the Thousand Corpse sect is in a rush to die as well? The Thousand Corpse sect's appearance at this point. Could it be that they had just been walking around, and somehow gotten lost? It was obviously impossible. They had purposely come here. Just think, it was not possible that they had merely come to watch the excitement. The Thousand Corpse sect had allied with the 5 sects? The 9th Underworld King laughed loudly, and asked, Your Majesty, do you really think that you are unmatched in this world? Indeed. Ma Duobao nodded honestly and without reservation. I am number 1 in this world, and I shall kill whomever does not acknowledge this fact. So, do you acknowledge it or not? This boast was very big, but the ninth underworld king could find no way to refute it. In terms of power, he would only be in the ranks of the Sword King and Beast Snake King. He could not even match the 8 kings, what more actually exchange blows with Ma Duo Bao. But how could he allow his party's morale to weaken at this moment? I really do not acknowledge the fact. The ninth underworld king smirked coldly. He stretched out a hand to summon something, and a copper coffin suddenly slid over. The 3 lives corpse casket. Pun, the casket's lid opened, and a corpse soldier jumped out. Shockingly, its face had a whole bunch of eyes, and upon counting, there were actually as many as 18 of them. An 18-eyed corpse king? How was that possible? The Thousand Corpse sect had schemed for several thousand years, and only just managed to produce a 15-eyed corpse king. Yet now, an 18-eyed corpse king actually appeared? Ling Han could not help but turn to look at Rong Huanxian. This was definitely linked to the 3 lives corpse casket. Could it be that Rong Huanxian had come to some form of agreement with the Thousand Corpse sect, and had thus returned the 3 lives corpse casket to them? With all 3 treasures assembled, some kind of metamorphosis had been stimulated. You plan to stop me with just that? Ma Duobao could not help but laugh loudly, his small eyes squinting. He appeared to be completely harmless, but a terrifying killing intent was exuded from his whole body, causing everyone to feel their blood running cold. With battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier, he was definitely the strongest person in this world, so who could remain fearless in front of him? Have you forgotten us, Your Majesty? The elites of the 5 sects all stepped out as well. They had a total of 5 ultimate elites with 18 stars of shattering void tier of battle prowess, and furthermore had a powerful, deadly weapon like the mountain and river axe as well. You all? Ma Duobao began to show his domineering side, and said coldly, a flock of lambs, no matter how many there are, how could they be a match for a lion? Hearing him describe them as lambs, whether it was the 5 sects of the Thousand Corpse sect, everyone looked indignant. Indeed, they did not have battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier, but with so many shattering void tier elites, how could it be that they would not be able to kill him by ganging up on him? Since that is the case, Ninth Underworld King, just do as what we have previously agreed on. Let's work together, an antique of the 5 sects said. All right. The Ninth Underworld King agreed decisively, and nodded at Rong Huanxian. The latter summoned out a copper coffin as well, and another 18-eyed corpse king jumped out. 3 lives corpse casket consisted of 3 caskets, and now, one was in the hands of the Ninth Underworld King, while the other 2 were still with Rong Huanxuan. Thankfully, they only had 2 18-eyed corpse kings, but their battle prowess was still very frightening. 7 great elites with battle prowess of 18 stars of shattering void tier had joined forces against Ma Duobao. Chapter 833 The Final Battle. Chapter 833 The Final Battle. Ma Duobao did not take them seriously at all and said, Come at me, all of you! Without you saying so, that was our intention. Zui Qifeng, Wu Gaoyuan, and the other 3 prodigies of the immortal realm, as well as 2 18-eyed corpse kings, the terror this group brought would make anyone shiver. Ho-ho, battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier. Even in the immortal realm, this is incredibly rare. I would really like to take a look at it. Too bad, so what if you have 20 stars of battle prowess? There is too big a gap in the immortal level. The gap between 10 stars and 20 stars of shattering void tier isn't even very big, so there is absolutely no reason to charge up to this limit. From this day on, the Purple Moon Empire will no longer exist. Zui Qifeng and the others all spoke with cold smirks, their words filled with disdain. Yet Ling Han shook his head. It was precisely because there was too big a gulf between each tier on the immortal level that there was a need to perfect cultivation on every cultivation level below that. Otherwise, on what basis would those so-called geniuses with 1 star or 2 stars be stronger than others? Zui Qifeng and the others spoke this way merely because they were not able to touch the high level of 20 stars. Any person sent down from the 5 sects of the immortal realm, if they were not suppressed by the regulation powers of the realm, would be able to sweep aside all opposition in the lower realm, but the 5 sects themselves might not be any kind of top-tier party in the immortal realm. Thus, the younger generation that they had nurtured might not have perfected their cultivation on every cultivation level. However, being able to reach 18 stars on Shattering Void tier was very extraordinary by itself. At least, in the lower realm, who knew how many millennia had passed for two such freaks like Ma Duobao and Helian Tianyan to appear. Ma Duobao carelessly raised a hand, and delivered an attack towards the 7 great elites. Hey! The 5 great prodigies all struck their own blows. Wu Gaoyuan even brandished the mountain and river axe. As the axe swept past, even space itself was torn open. The 2 18-eyed corpse kings were unafraid of Ma Duobao's might, and directly charged towards him. Pun pun. The 2 great corpse kings were instantly sent flying back, but with this collision, Ma Duobao's attack had been dissipated considerably, and Zhui Qifeng and the others managed to easily parry it. You're reading on Novelful, thanks. From this, it was clear how powerful Ma Duobao was. Just a careless strike, yet it could only be matched with the combined effort of 7 great elites with 18 stars of Shattering Void tier of battle prowess. Ping ping. Pang pang. They were soon embroiled in a fierce battle. Both sides definitely had ultimate moves that they had not yet used. They battled all the way from the foot of the mountain to the peak, and then into the skies. Whole swathes of stars fell. It was as if it was the end of the world. Thankfully, the stars in the skies had also been formed by the powers of the world, and could be replenished endlessly. If not, going by how they were fighting, no matter how many stars there were in the skies, they would not survive the punishment the fighters were inflicting on them. Hee hee, have you washed your necks clean? The heavenly Astro King asked with a smirk. Though the 8 kings could not be considered second-tier elites as they were now, with the appearance of battle prowess of 18 stars of Shattering Void tier, 15 stars of battle prowess would still rank them on the 3rd tier. Although there were only 8 of them, they had enough confidence that they would be able to crush the over 100 Shattering Void tier elites from the 5 sections. What shameless boasting! A few brown-haired antiques began to ignite their vitality. Hong, a terrifying power erupted from their bodies, and they had instantly raised their battle prowess to 14 stars. The 5 sects indeed had deep roots. Ordinarily, once they entered the Shattering Void tier, the elites of the 5 sects would choose to seal themselves away, and wait until the reckoning was complete, then enter into the immortal realm and continue their cultivation. This would save effort, and lead to better results. However, there were also a few that could first choose not to seal themselves off, but rather continue cultivation. They would only leave themselves a few dozen years of time, then use the time liquid. They were called the Protector Technique Kings. If a major issue that would threaten the survival of the 5 sects appeared, though, it was not very likely they would unseal themselves and step out to eliminate the danger. But because they themselves did not have many years left, every time they battled, they had to burn their vitality. This actually was expending their lifespan as a price, and would further shorten their already limited lifespans. Even if they entered into the immortal realm in future, they might not have enough time to advance into the immortal level. This was something that required considerable awareness and courage. Thus, the Protector Technique Kings were the most respected. Even Zhui Qifeng and the other prodigies of the immortal realm were very polite and incredibly respectful towards them. There was a total of 5 Protector Technique Kings, and 4 amongst them had reached 14 stars of Shattering Void tier of battle prowess, whereas the last had achieved 15 stars of Shattering Void tier. With the addition of the 5 of them, the might of the 5 sects naturally experienced a great increase. Charge! Though the Lunar King was a woman, her temper was the most violent, and she was the first to charge out and attack. 8 lunar techniques! From the very beginning, she was unleashing powerful moves. Her 2 dainty hands transformed into earth-shattering giant palms that delivered successive palm strikes downwards. The other 7 kings were naturally not just going to sit by and watch. They, too, charged out respectively. On the other side, Ling Han seemed to have become completely free. He rubbed his chin, and mumbled to himself. Is there still a need for me to move? The Revere Life Sword was no longer glowing. In actual truth, it was Ma Duobao who was controlling it from a distance just now. Now that Ma Duobao himself was fighting against powerful enemies, he naturally would not have the leisure to manipulate the Revere Life Sword anymore. Though Ling Han's defenses were top tier, and there might not be any other that could match him, his destructive abilities, in the face of shattering void tier elites, were completely negligible. Whether he moved or otherwise, it did not seem like it would cause any changes. Ling Han, I'll be your opponent! Su Xiu, wielding the absolute saber, ran out. Ling Han swatted a hand at him, and said, I can't bother to fight with you, you are too weak now. Su Xiu was completely enraged, trembling. He was still a well-known figure of the younger generation in this whole world. Even in the immortal realm, he could still be considered a genius as he had grasped Saber Heart, though he wouldn't be as rare as he was here. You are underestimating me too much. What if I join in then? Me too. And I. Dong Linger, the small sword emperor, and the son of lightning all stepped out as well, their eyes cold and harsh. Ling Han shook the Revere Life Sword, and said, Fine, then I'll send you all down to hell so that you can atone for the innocent blood your predecessors have spilled. They are all ants, contributing what they have for the sake of our immortal realm. Should that not be their responsibility? The son of lightning said, a twisted smile curling his lips. He had already summoned out the replica of the mountain and river axe. There was a sliver of the realm powers condensed inside, so its might was not to be underestimated. Ling Han's expression grew harsh, and he raised his sword level. Pointing at the son of lightning, he said, Just for these words, you deserve to die. You would have to be able to kill me first. The son of lightning laughed loudly. Brandishing the mountain and river axe, he charged out in attack. This treasure had already been activated, and was exuding a terrifying might. But the Revere Life Sword showed absolutely no reaction. Could it be that it had expended too much energy in the battle of ultimate brilliance just now? This was not something impossible. The mountain and river axe could be proclaimed the strongest spirit tool in this whole realm, and adding Wu Gaoyuan's own power, how terrifying was that? Yet he was still blocked by the Revere Life Sword. Though Ma Duobao had been manipulating it, there would definitely have been a great expense of energy, so it was logical that it could not unleash its powers now. Ha ha! When Su Xiu saw this, he could not help but laugh loudly. If this sword of yours is unable to activate, how could it be that you will be able to match us? He activated the absolute saber as well, and slashed out at Ling Han. Once these two spirit tools were activated, they would equal shattering void tier battle prowess, and furthermore, that would be 10 stars at least, which was even stronger than the Ice Dragon Ground Blast formation. This had far exceeded Ling Han's own battle prowess. Chapter 834 Scaring Away the Third Killing Formation. Chapter 834 Scaring Away the Third Killing Formation. Ling Han used the Thunderclap Ninth Heaven, and added with the Demon Fairy Steps, his body became incredibly agile. He had drawn Zhu Xian'er, Rabbit, and the gold-seeking rat into the Black Tower so that they wouldn't be unexpectedly wounded in the battle royale, because he could not divert his attention to look after them as well. There was no need for him to worry about the 1,000 veteran soldiers. They had placed themselves in a battle formation, and with incomparably frightening battle prowess, charged into the group battle the 8 kings were involved in to fight alongside their respective bosses. Although the absolute saber and mountain and river axe were powerful, they were still merely 2 spirit tools. Furthermore, they did not have tool spirits. This meant that they could only deliver frighteningly mighty attacks, but were not capable of automatically locking down onto their targets, and thus required manual control. No matter how monstrously talented Su Xiu and the Son of Lightning were, their cultivation level was still a great disadvantage. Firstly, they would have to be able to grasp Ling Han's movements to aim their attacks. As long as they could do this, with the speed of the attacks delivered from these 2 spirit tools, Ling Han would not be able to dodge. But the problem was, they would have to grasp Ling Han's movements first. How fast was Ling Han's speed now? It was a whole blur to their eyes. For every 10 attacks they shot out, at least 9 would miss. If they faced any other person, it would be fine. With the might of these 2 spirit tools, suffering even a single attack, even if he did not die, he would be heavily injured. But it was Ling Han now. His physique was as tough as level 10 precious metal, so what would being hit with a single attack do? It did not manage to give him an itch, what more pain. If he was slashed 100 overtimes, perhaps he would only have a very shallow wound. There was nothing that could be done. The toughness of his physique allowed him to act as recklessly as he liked. Nio will come and help you! Hunyo charged out as well. Her physique was far inferior to Ling Han's, but in terms of speed, she was superior. As she scrambled up and down, her tiny fists and claws were filled with destructive ability, and posed an incredible threat to Su Xiaoran and his group. On all 3 sides, it was a battle royale. Whichever battle it was, they were on the level of shattering void tier. Thus, even heaven tier cultivators were not qualified to join in on this kind of battle, and could only watch from afar unless they, too, could set up their own formation. But the battle between Ma Duobao and Wu Gaoyuan was the real decisive battle. Whoever won this battle, it would doubtlessly result in a massacre of the other side. Therefore, though the other 2 groups were battling furiously, they all split out a portion of their attention to focus on the fierce battle taking place in the highest spot. Would it be Ma Duobao who emerged victorious over all his contenders, or would he be swallowed by the pack of wolves? In the second group, the Beast Snake King shouted loudly, "Asura Demon Emperor, are you not going to reveal yourself?" The Asura Demon Emperor. Ling Han's heart trembled. That was an existence with 15 stars of shattering void tier of battle prowess, and could very likely tip the balance of victory in the second group to one side. You really have a dog's nose. I've already hidden so far away, yet you could still sniff me out. The Asura Demon Emperor appeared. He was still possessing the body of a sturdy man, and there was black demonic chi twined all over his body. Merely one look, and one could tell that he was far different from an ordinary person. The other one too, how long do you want to continue watching the show? The Sword King called out as well, shooting out a flash of sword chi to a distant spot. Hee hee! A cloaked person shot out from that spot. The third killing formation. A person who could set up formation techniques by nature. From birth, he was the strongest existence in the world, and could kill even shattering void tier elites. Ling Han's eyes swept over him, and he could not help but secretly feel shocked. He had seen this person once before, but at the time, the latter gave him a feeling of weakness. Though he was very powerful, he himself was extremely weak and feeble. But now, this feeling was gone. Previously he had helped out the Thousand Corpse sect, and the payment he had received was probably related to this, compensating for a weakness of his. How powerful would this kind of third killing formation be? The 9 great killing formations could all kill shattering void tier elites. To be specific, Ling Han had only seen the 4th killing formation. Moreover, it was not naturally formed, but a handicapped formation that the Thousand Corpse sect had laid out, and had been easily broken by Feng Piyun. But how strong would a third killing formation that had compensated for its disadvantage be? Could he kill a shattering void tier with 10 stars of battle prowess, or 15 stars? I have been asked a favor. I will only act once, kill one person, and leave, the third killing formation said, his eyes focused on the 8 kings. He said he would only kill one person, and from the looks of it, the person he wanted to kill was one of the 8 kings. With the inclusion of the Asura Demon Emperor, the 8 kings were actually no longer at the advantage in the battle. The third killing formation really could kill one of them. Then, with this as an opening, the remaining 7 kings would definitely retreat in defeat little by little. They would either retreat, or die in battle here. It was difficult for a shattering void tier elite to die, but it did not mean that they were not killable. Ling Han wanted to move to block the third killing formation. Though his battle prowess was not strong, his defenses were much too terrifying, and it would be a perfect thing for him to use that to cause a disruption in enemy plans. You had best stay here obediently. Su Xiaoran smirked coldly. Working together with the Son of Lightning, they stopped Ling Han from interfering. The cooperation of the Absolute Saber and the Mountain and River Axe. If even that could not detain Ling Han, then something would be wrong. Humph! Ma Duobao's cold humph was heard from the skies. For the sake of, I will spare your life, scram! The third killing formation could not help but sneer. What a big boast, to actually dare tell him to scram. He raised his head to look upwards. Initially, his expression was one of disapproval, but immediately, his expression changed drastically. Though the masses could not see his expression, they could clearly see his entire body was trembling. You are! He exclaimed in shock as if he had experienced a scare. His tone was filled with indescribable terror. Are you getting lost or not? Ma Duobao rebuked harshly. Yes. Yes. The third killing formation did not even dare say another word. He actually just turned around and left, and in an instant he had disappeared without a trace. That was the third killing formation that could kill even Shattering Void Tear, something formed by nature. How could it be that he would be scared off by just a single word? Could it be that Ma Duobao had another identity? The third killing formation had recognized him, then had been scared off and fled. Humph, you still dare to lose focus when you are exchanging blows with us? Wu Gaoyuan and his group smirked coldly, and they all made their moves. Hong! Instantly, Ma Duobao was drowned in endless light. In this kind of highly intense battle, how could he split his attention? Wu Gaoyuan and his group all smiled. Though the third killing formation had been scared off, if they could kill Ma Duobao, or at least inflict a serious injury on him, it would be absolutely worth it. As the brilliance dissipated, Ma Duobao stood there proudly, without even a scratch. If one had to insist, then there were a few places on his imperial robes that had been torn, which proved that he had indeed suffered the barrage of attacks just now. However, his body had not been wounded. What? Wu Gaoyuan and the others exclaimed in shock. What was going on here? They all had battle prowess of 18 stars of Shattering Void Tear. If their attack landed solidly, so what if the other had battle prowess of 20 stars of Shattering Void Tear? He would still be severely wounded, or even killed directly. Your physique, Cui Qifeng came to realize. It has reached the toughness of level 10 precious metal. Pooh! Everyone choked in astonishment. Previously, that terrifying physique of Ling Han's had already given them a psychological fear. Furthermore, Ling Han only had a monstrous physique, whereas his battle prowess was completely negligible. But what about now? Ma Duobao's battle prowess was already on top of everyone here, and adding this kind of powerful defense to the mix, how were they supposed to continue fighting? Wu Gaoyuan and his group all swallowed with difficulty. This was the first time that they felt that they had completely lost control of the situation in this war. This Ma Duobao could completely match the alternative dragon from years ago. His battle prowess was invincible, and his defenses were unbreakable. Even if immortals descended, what could they do against him? Thankfully, Shattering Void Tear elites still had a limited lifespan. Time was the strongest weapon. I couldn't kill you, but I could trap you in the prison of this realm until your death. Ma Duobao smiled calmly, and countered. Without this bit of ability, what use is there to speak of splitting open the skies? Shua, his aura was spiking crazily, killing intent surging forth. Even Wu Gaoyuan and the others felt a chill run down their backs, goosebumps covering their whole bodies. They felt that he could kill them just by raising his hand. Chapter 835 First Killing Formation. Chapter 835 First Killing Formation. Humans, how could they be so powerful until such an extent? 18 stars of Shattering Void Tear, this was practically already the ultimate battle prowess of this tier, and there were actually as many as 7 people who had attained it. By joining forces, they could definitely rival someone with 20 stars of Shattering Void Tear, so why did they still feel trepidation? Could it be that Ma Duobao's battle prowess surpassed that of 20 stars? Impossible! Wu Gaoyuan and others shook their heads. They absolutely could not believe that one could surpass the battle prowess limit of 20 stars. Even the descendants of divine beasts and sages could rarely achieve the battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier, let alone surpass it. We must get rid of him today. Otherwise, given the boost of power of the nation, he will only become stronger, Zhu Qifeng said. Attack! Xiao Miuyan screamed, brandishing a long blood-red sword. She then made a cut at her eyebrows. Her forehead broke open, and a drop of crimson blood rushed forth, as thick and viscous as if it had crystallized. The moment this drop of blood appeared, heaven and earth were moved. Black clouds began to roll, with blazing white lighting looming in the background. This drop of blood was just too powerful. It was strong to the point of almost exceeding the limit of this realm, which resulted in the reaction of heaven and earth. Immortal blood! Ma Duobao was finally showing a cautious expression. The immortals really didn't just send 5 people down, but also sent personal artifacts. Although a drop of blood couldn't represent the immortals at all, could one imagine the power of immortals' blood in this lower realm? Xiao Miuyan began mumbling something. It was unknown what she was mumbling about. At this moment, this drop of immortals' blood was transformed into a sudden rain that splashed on her long sword. Suddenly, this sword exuded an endless brilliance. Its power could even suppress that of the mountain and river axe. Just a single drop of immortal's blood could boost the sword's power to an extent where it could at least rival the real mountain and river axe. It was really too terrifying. It was the same for Zhu Qifeng and the others. They each took out a drop of immortal's blood and smeared it on their own spirit tools. In an instant, their auras became more terrifying by several times, just as if they had taken on the body of immortals. Now, the battle prowess of these 5 people would have reached 20 stars of shattering void tier. Each one of them wouldn't be any inferior to Ma Duobao. Die! The 5 people joined forces, with each of them launching powerful attacks. The 5 spirit tools unleashed their power that surged upwards, causing a great number of stars to fall. How could this be blocked? With the power of the 5 being 20 stars of shattering void tier, even a physique of level 10 precious metal would still be slashed apart. Could Ma Duobao also have the terrifying healing ability like Ling Han? Everything would end. Ma Duobao had a solemn expression. Strong as he might be, he didn't dare to look lightly upon the battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier, not to mention when his opponents were as many as 5. He held out his finger, and gently tapped chest, saying, "Release!" 1. In an instant, endless killing intent began circulating. While his body was emitting white light, one could clearly see that his exposed skin was covered with glowing patterns, ancient, thick, and imposing. What was even more astonishing was the killing intent. The sight of these patterns could make a person's heart feel fear and flesh shiver. People with lower cultivation level would immediately be blinded at first sight. Martial intent? No, these were patterns of a formation. Ling Han had seen Yin Hong brand formation patterns on her own body. This was very practical. Using her own body as a formation, the power of the patterns could be activated anytime for attack or defense. Yet, these formation patterns on Ma Duobao, it seemed as if he was born with them. So much so that Ling Han doubted that anyone could reproduce these patterns. This was because they were extremely uncomfortable to the eyes just by looking at them, and this was when he had activated the Eye of Truth and was circulating Sword Heart at the same time. Would ordinary shattering void tier cultivators dare to stare at it? Yet, if one didn't even dare to look at it, how could one reproduce these patterns? Being so complex, how could they be mastered if one had not studied them meticulously for decades, or even centuries? Born with these patterns? Damn, then he would be the same as the 3rd killing formation. It was no wonder that he had shown mercy to the 3rd killing formation previously and his manner of speaking was odd. It was no wonder that the 3rd killing formation was so emotionally moved. It was because they were similar and recognized each other. But the 3rd killing formation was actually scared off by a single word from Ma Duobao. What did this mean? The world's 1st killing formation! The 5 people, including Zhu Qifeng, all halted their attacks simultaneously, while their faces revealed expressions of horror. Ma Duo Bao was unexpectedly a natural formation in human form, and the first killing formation at that. Legend had it that the first killing formation could slaughter immortals. How could the group of 5 including Zhuqifeng not be afraid? They had yet to become immortals. Ling Han finally understood. It was no wonder that when Ma Duo Bao had gotten on top of the martial stone, he had left behind, number 1, as his name. This was not just his pride, but also his real name. The world's first killing formation. Ma Duo Bao dealt out a blow, and Hong, endless killing intent circulated, and the entire realm became shrouded. Everywhere the white light swept past, space was forcefully torn open, and endless energy flowed through in disorder. Its impact was incomparably terrifying. This was his true strength, the world's first killing formation that could slaughter immortals. The group of 5 including Zhuqifeng were forced to stand together into a corner. They joined forces to confront the attack. So what if the strongest spirit tools in the world joined forces? They were still suppressed. They could barely defend themselves. Pu, blood was splashing out from their bodies, and they became heavily injured in an instant. This made the 5 great sects and 1,000 corpse sect lose hope. The world's first killing formation, it would kill whatever stood in its path, be it gods or Buddha. In this small realm, it was absolutely invincible. Otherwise, would it be crowned as the number 1? Hong! At this moment, something weird happened. Coming out from the crevice in space Ma Duo Bao had torn open was the bow of a ship. Since the crevice in space was not very big, only a tiny bit of the bow of the ship came out. However, this tiny bit was enough to make everyone weak in the knees, causing them to neatly fall from the sky. No one was an exception. It was the same for the group of 5 including Zhuqifeng, the 18-eyed corpse kings, and even Ma Duo Bao. Pun, more than 100 shattering void tear cultivators had fallen from the sky like dumplings, and every one of them had fallen down pitifully. They were in an incomparably miserable state. This scene was actually a bit funny since no one expected shattering void tear cultivators could also become like this, but no one was able to laugh at this moment. Instead, their expressions revealed unsurpassed horror. Everyone knew that the void was the most dangerous place in the world. If one was to land within it, even the physique of level 10 precious metal would be quickly torn into pieces. Yet, it was indeed too difficult to open up the void. This could only be done by shattering void tear cultivators, thereby opening up a channel to enter into the immortal realm. Yet, shattering the void was an absolutely dangerous matter. One could easily fall to death. Even if there weren't any ambush from the great formation put up by the 5 great sects, the maximum number of cultivators of the shattering void tier who could successfully shatter the void was only half. But an entire ship was coming out through the void. This was like a myth. What materials could resist the destructive power of the void? In that moment, everyone had lost any intention of fighting. They were only left with feelings of shock and puzzlement. This ship, what did it represent? Hong, the bow of the ship gently struck the crevice in space. It obviously didn't seem heavy, but after each impact, the heavens were shaken. Even cultivators of the shattering void tier couldn't help but vomit blood as this impact seemed to have directly hit their hearts. Black Tower vibrated gently inside him. Ling Han remained nonchalant as if nothing happened, so did Hunyeo. This little girl was similarly very strange. Chapter 836 The Huge Ship That Came Out the Void. Chapter 836 The Huge Ship That Came Out the Void. Hong! Finally, after the impact from striking at the crevice more than a dozen times, the bow of the ship appeared completely. The entire hull of the ship followed suit, sliding through the opening due to the pull of gravity, and came crashing down to the ground. The bow of the ship hit a mountain peak, and the latter easily collapsed. The great protective formation was practically useless. That shield of light barrier immediately crumbled into innumerable fragments upon impact, scattered into an infinite distance. The lofty mountain collapsed as if it were made of sand and stones, which would completely disintegrate with just a single touch. Once the bow hit the ground, the entire ship swerved downwards loudly, and landed on the ground with a deafening bang. The ship lay flat on the ground, appearing as if it was sailing. The ship was extremely long and tall. Its length was nearly 1 kilometer, while its height was more than 170 meters. From a distance, it looked like a small mountain. The ship's entire hull was dark green in color, and mainly made of wood, yet it was impossible to ascertain which tree species the wood belonged to. A ship made of wood was capable of resisting the powerful pressure and tearing force of the void? How could this be acceptable? It was unknown how many years the ship had existed within the void. The flag placed at the bow of the ship was completely destroyed, leaving only the bare flagpole. Aside from that, there were several holes in the ship's hull, which appeared to be caused by external bombardment. If the ship had been bombarded within the void, then that would be acceptable. However, if the ship had already been bombarded before entering the void, then that would indeed be extremely scary. Whose strength was so powerful to have caused such damage to the ship that even the void couldn't do anything to? And what kind of destructive power could have achieved this? The latter possibility was more likely. Given that the void could blast holes in the hull of the ship, how could it just blast a few holes? It would have certainly destroyed the entire ship. The big ship lay there quietly. Although it caused a stir when it appeared, it was now extremely quiet. The hull was originally shining, but its luster now appeared somewhat dim. It looked ordinary. Those who didn't know the truth would have thought that a terrible tsunami had brought this ship here from the sea. The pressure had weakened a lot, although it still made people somewhat uncomfortable. There was no longer that agonizing feeling that made people vomit blood. For a moment, everyone's eyes were burning. Since this ship could pass through the void without being destroyed, it was precisely a treasure in and of itself. If the ship could be dismantled and its materials used for refining, there was no knowing how many high-grade spirit tools could be made from it. Moreover, with the hull already being so precious, if there was something inside it, then what kind of treasure would that be? What use was there to continue fighting? Everyone rushed towards the big ship. They wanted to leap onto the deck and enter the ship through the cabin doors, but soon discovered that they simply couldn't make it onto the deck. It was merely a height of 170 meters or so, yet it was like an insurmountable mountain. No matter how high they jumped or flew, they were always lacking a little bit. They had no way of landing on the top of the ship. The same was true for shattering void tier cultivators. This made them even more certain that this was truly a treasure that would transcend everything. Even in the immortal realm, it would be something that everyone would fight tooth and nail for. If the deck couldn't be reached, then weren't there some holes in the ship's hull? Someone gave it a try, and proceeded to enter smoothly. This made others excited, and they quickly followed suit. Should there be any godly artifact inside the ship, it might immediately turn the tide of the battle. Your Majesty! The 8 kings simultaneously looked at Ma Duobao. Let's go in to take a look. Ma Duobao nodded. He tried to block the 5 great sects and 1,000 corpse sect from entering, but his power immediately disappeared as soon as he approached the big ship. Now, everyone's battle prowess was no longer important. The important point was that this ship could change everything. Tan brother, what about you? Ma Duobao turned around to ask Ling Han. I will go in by myself. Ling Han nodded. Good. Ma Duobao left the 1,000 elite troops behind. Leading the 8 kings, he entered through one of the holes in the ship's hull. Ling Han brought out Zhu Xian'er, Rabbit, and Gold-Seeking Rat from the Black Tower, and recounted to them what had happened earlier. Treasure, the world's biggest treasure! Rabbit became round-eyed with amazement. Brat, Lord Rabbit can confirm that this is a treasure even in the immortal realm. You must obtain it! The Gold-Seeking Rat was even more excited, directly throwing itself there. It then hung from the ship's hull and nibbled at it with great effort. As it turned out, it had fixed its attention onto a rivet on the hull, and was exerting all its effort to pull it out. However, when its mouth latched onto the big ship, it was completely unable to use its ability. Naturally, it became so anxious that it screamed, making loud z sounds. The delicious food was in front of you, but you couldn't eat it. This made it anxious to the extreme. Ling Han had never seen the Gold-Seeking Rat so agitated. Even if it was given the level 10 precious metal, it would not have been so eager. It seemed that the value of the ship itself had exceeded that of level 10 precious metal. This made sense, otherwise, how could it have resisted the pressure of the void? Come, we shall go in to take a look. Ling Han took the lead. Hun Yo tilted her head to one side, while her hand grabbed onto Ling Han's clothes, allowing him to bring her in with him. She suddenly said, "Weird, Yo seems to have seen this big ship. Is that so?" Ling Han's heart was moved. "Think carefully, where and when did you see it?" "Yo can't remember," Hun Yo answered in disappointment. Ling Han smiled, patted her little head, and said, "It's all right. Once inside, you will see more things, which perhaps may help you remember." The origins of Hun Yo were unusual, and she was incomparably formidable and terrifying. To say that she might be connected to this mysterious ship was not an impossibility. They chose a hole in the ship, through which they entered the lowest floor thereof. It was very dark inside, so dark that even they could not see clearly. This was extremely extraordinary. One had to know that they could still see things even in a darker environment with their eyesight, unless there was some kind of restriction there. Only that would affect their eyesight. Ling Han raised his hand, transforming his origin power into fire attribute. A blazing flame was burning on his palm, yet despite it, the light could not reach very far. It was as if there was an invisible force that would suppress and prevent the spreading of light. Fortunately, they could at least see things within a range of over 3 meters. They were in a cabin, but found it to be completely empty. Presumably, the opening of the hole was caused by the rushing force of the void, which had also destroyed everything inside. This was easy to understand. The outer defense had to be the strongest, while the inside would be much more fragile, just like with the Great Mountain Protection Formation. Opening the hatch, they appeared in a very long walkway outside, with cabins on both sides. One by one, they pushed open the door to each cabin, only to find that all of them were empty, just as if they had been looted by robbers. They walked for a while, and found that they had reached the end of the walkway, but there wasn't any staircase to the upper floor. Hence, they turned around and walked back. Anyway, the hole was only a kilometer long, and it would not waste much time even if they walked back and forth for a few hundred times. But when they were halfway there, unexpectedly, they saw 5 women coming towards them. They were by no means people from the 5 great sects, Thousand Corpse Sect, or Purple Moon Empire. They were each holding onto a spear tightly in their hands, clad in a battle gear made of silver metal, which sparkled with a bright silvery radiance. Could they be crew members? Yikes, they weren't dead yet? Chapter 837 Dead Souls. Chapter 837 Dead Souls. How dare you break into this place? You'd better leave! The 5 women shouted simultaneously. Suddenly, an imposing aura swept over. Zhu Xian Air and Rabbit trembled from head to toe, while Gold-Seeking Rat had directly turned over with 4 limbs facing the sky, pretending to be dead. Hun Yo was immediately upset, and called out, "Nyo won't leave, so what? You seek death!" A woman raised her spear, and aimed it at Hun Yo. Immediately, insurmountable killing intent circulated, and the air itself seemed to have frozen over. Ling Han was shocked. The strength of this woman's imposing aura was even stronger than that of Ma Duo Bao. How could this be possible? Ma Duo Bao was the world's first killing formation, capable of executing immortals. Theoretically, he was invincible in this realm. However, the strength of this woman's imposing aura was even above that of Ma Duo Bao. There was only one possibility. Immortals. Yet even if immortals descended into the lower realm, they had to be suppressed by the realm powers. It was therefore impossible to exhibit the power of an immortal. Strange. Really too strange. Ling Han pulled Hun Yo aside, and said smilingly, "We will leave now." They slowly retreated until they returned to the first original cabin, and exited through the hole to the outside of the ship. Only then did they see that those people who had entered earlier than them were also retreating in succession. Sui Qifeng, Ma Duo Bao, and the others were no exception. In other words, even having the battle prowess stronger than that of 20 stars of shattering void tier, they did not dare start a fight. This was sufficient proof of the strength of these female soldiers. What was even more frightening was that these were only soldiers, absolutely not those with the most powerful battle prowess on board the ship. Brother Ma, even you are no match for them? Ling Han asked Ma Duobao. Ma Duobao smiled bitterly and said, It seems that I have previously underestimated the whole world. Just a few random people coming out is enough to make me feel my own insignificance. How was that possible? With his battle prowess, he was already standing at the peak of humanity. It was already extremely difficult to meet an existence that could be compared with him, not to mention that so many have appeared in such a short while. These weren't really humans in flesh, but merely manifestation of thought that has not dissipated. Small Tower informed abruptly. What? Ling Han was startled. The 5 women that he saw weren't actually humans in flesh? Could it be that they were ghosts? According to your understanding, they can indeed be called ghosts. Small Tower sensed Ling Han's thoughts. After their death, there remained a strong lingering obsession. Thanks to the tyrannical strength of the deceased when they were alive, their souls took such a form. But they were indistinguishable from actual humans, and seemed to possess self-awareness. Ling Han said. Hadn't the 5 women chased them away earlier? Their reaction was not any different from that of an ordinary person. That's nothing more than an instinct inherited from their lifetime, Small Tower said dully. If you don't believe me, you can try asking for their names. The soul will only retain an obsession, while other memories will completely disappear. Ling Han's mouth twitched before asking, Then will I be stabbed to death by them with a spear? They don't exist at all. They have simply deceived your eyes, and even the immortals. How can they hurt you? Small Tower said disdainfully, again beginning to act Sundara. Ling Han considered it for a moment before saying, Brother Ma, what do you say we try going in again? Oh, Tan brother, have you already come up with a good strategy? Asked Ma Duobao. Ling Han burst out into a hearty laughter and said, You will know once we get inside. All right. Ma Duobao swiftly agreed. He still went by his previous creed. It was not that he believed in Ling Han's strength, but rather in Ling Han's character. The 8 kings looked at each other in dismay, and followed behind Ma Duobao even though the female soldiers whom they had met earlier made them all shudder, robbing them of the courage to fight. This wasn't because they were timid, but rather that there was just too much of a gap between the 2 sides' strength. They would absolutely die if they fought. They had sworn to die with their king. Seeing that Ling Han and several people have entered the big ship, Wu Gaoyuan and others looked at each other before following suit. In any case, should they encounter danger, then there were some people in front of them, while if they encountered treasures, then they could grab them as well. Shortly after entering the hull, they encountered that group of 5 female patrol soldiers in front of them. How dare you break into this place? You'd better leave! A female soldier shouted, her reaction not any different from before in the slightest. But precisely due to this, Ling Han, Ma Duobao and others all sensed that something was amiss. If someone had accidentally broken into your home, the first time you might politely ask the other person to leave, but what if the other party very quickly broke in again? Your reaction would definitely be completely different, right? But the reaction of the 5 women was exactly the same as before. This was odd, unusually odd. Sure enough, as per what Small Tower had mentioned, these 5 women were merely a manifestation of their obsession from their lifetime. Naturally, they had no memory at all, and thus they wouldn't be able to remember that these intruders had come in once before. Furthermore, a large ship had smashed out of the void, but they were still patrolling nonchalantly. This in itself wasn't normal. Everyone had been simply intimidated by the imposing aura of these dead souls before, so they had been unable to think properly. Ling Han smoothly flicked his finger, and a flash of sword chi immediately swept past one of the women. You seek death! The woman thrust herself forward, brandishing her spear in a forward motion to pierce the top of Ling Han's skull. Her power was too terrifying. Even Ma Duobao couldn't help but want to strike back. This was the instinct of a cultivator, for how could one wait helplessly for death? Meanwhile, Wu Gaoyuan and others who had followed behind revealed a sarcastic smile. To actually provoke such a presence, this was courting death indeed. So what if Ling Han had a body with the toughness of level 10 precious metal? Facing such a presence, it would still be completely vulnerable. Ling Han stood upright, unafraid. On the contrary, he actually stuck out his chest. Hong, the woman charged forward, and actually passed through his body, frightening the 8 kings who were behind to the point that all their hair was on ends, as well as scaring Wu Gaoyuan and the others even further behind until they almost broke into a run. Was there something wrong with this woman's brain? Was she going to kill them? This is a virtual shadow, Ma Duobao immediately asked. He had seen the woman actually pass through Ling Han's body as if it did not exist. Ghost! Ling Han uttered a single word. Ma Duobao laughed heartily. He didn't believe in gods and Buddha. He believed that the so-called gods were nothing more than living creatures with stronger power and longer lifespan. Thus, he was naturally not afraid of ghosts. He stared at the remaining 4 female soldiers and said, "This is what an immortal is. After death, the soul will not vanish, and just this imposing aura is capable of scaring one to death." Had Ling Han not tested this out for once, who could believe that these women were merely souls, and were practically harmless? Seeing this, Wu Gaoyuan and others finally recovered, while their faces became somewhat tinged with red. The knowledge and experience of their group, comprising of shattering void tier cultivators and even beings of the immortal realm, could not even compare with that of a mere cultivator in the deity transformation tier. How embarrassing! Get lost! The remaining 4 women continued to shout and strike together, charging forward, but were unable to do anything. But after a few times, Ling Han still feels some sort of headache arising, and could not help but ask Small Tower about it. Since they are dead souls lingering due to obsession, it will naturally cause a certain impact on your soul. If exposed to it for 8 to 10 years, you will slowly die as well, Small Tower explained. Fortunately, it would only take a while to explore this big ship, so naturally there was no need to be afraid of being possessed by ghosts and slowly dying. Chapter 838 Drink a Cup of Tea with Me. Chapter 838 Drink a Cup of Tea with Me. The barrage of dead souls would deal a certain amount damage on the soul level. After all, these female soldiers had been incredibly strong when they were alive, and were definitely stronger than Ling Han. After death, they could still leave a mark behind in the world, as their obsession had not subsided even with death. This was very difficult to imagine. One had to know that this great ship had crashed out of the void, and the void similarly had a deadly strangling effect on the soul. Yet they managed to appear completely unscathed. These people must have been immortals when they were alive. The barrage that Ling Han suffered was a little heavy. According to the traditional understanding of cultivators, what did the soul symbolize? Indestructible and ageless, capable of lasting eternally. But what about now? A ship of immortals was heavily damaged, and the immortals on board had all been eliminated. The so-called immortal realm should only be a realm that was on a higher level of martial arts, right? There were slightly more strong elites, and they lived slightly longer, with slightly larger territory and slightly more resources. However, they were not omnipotent and everlasting gods, in the true meaning of the word. The 5 female soldiers attacked, releasing shrill screams. They did not only aim for Ling Han, but also the others as well. Though they no longer had the abilities of an elite, they still had a damaging effect on the soul level. Ling Han could withstand it for 8 to 10 years, but that did not imply that others could do the same. Shattering void tier ultimate elites were naturally unafraid, especially those who had formed hearts of martial arts. Their souls were stable and firm. But below shattering void tier, those who had not formed hearts of martial arts had all paled, and felt incredibly awful. Their souls were being torn apart by these dead souls, causing them great agony. However, it was possible an astonishing ultimate treasure was hidden on board this ship. No one wanted to step back right now. Even if they themselves could not obtain it, they wanted to have a look at the very least. This was an irresistible temptation to them. Moreover, fateful opportunity, as the name suggested, was not something that could be obtained merely through strength. Otherwise, why would there be so many people adventuring in mystery realms? wouldn't they all retreat at the sight of others stronger than them? Pa! A deity transformation tier cultivator suddenly collapsed, and did not get back up again. He was dead. His soul had been destroyed, so his physical body was naturally merely an empty shell that would slowly decay now. He was naturally a member of the 5 sections. Moreover, he was an experienced deity transformation tier cultivator. Anywhere else, he would be considered an elite, but in this place, he had died so soundlessly. There wasn't even anyone to store his body into their spatial spirit tool. They couldn't even bother to bring him out for burial. Pa! 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 With the barrage of the dead souls of these female soldiers, many collapsed successively. They were all in the deity transformation and flower blossom tier. Those cultivators that were in lower cultivation levels would not be qualified to enter this place. Those below heaven tier, get out! The Sword Emperor commanded harshly. He had formed Sword Heart, and this shout reached directly into the soul, instantly causing the eyes of many whose common sense had been overwhelmed by their powerful greed to clear. They came back to reality, and hurriedly retreated. Without the qualification to even stand in this place, what use was there to talk about fateful opportunity? They would only be wildly delivering themselves up to be slaughtered. Even so, the heaven tier elites were still a bit stressed, almost vomiting in their discomfort. However, their souls would not be slashed by these dead souls, at least for now. They would last long enough to thoroughly search this great ship once. They searched one cabin after another. If there appeared a secret treasure ahead, they wouldn't be qualified to fight over it with Ma Duo Bao and his group. This was for Zhuo Qifeng and the other elites to attempt. Ling Han walked alongside Ma Duo Bao. The dead souls of the 5 female soldiers were patrolling this lowest floor, but looking at the number of cabins, the number of troops should far exceed this number. Only the dead souls of these 5 female soldiers appeared. Was it because the 5 of them were stronger than the others? Or was it that the dead souls of the others were elsewhere? With this question in mind, they came to the next floor. This floor was similarly filled with multiple individual cabins. From the looks of their size, they were also rooms meant for resting, but just like on the floor beneath this one, all were completely empty. As they advanced further, they once again encountered the 5-man troop of the dead souls of the female soldiers. This was also the existence that had scared off the others, but this time, no one was afraid anymore, and despite the barrage of the female soldiers, they continued their journey ahead. Though the ship was large, how long would it take to walk around it? They entered the 3rd floor from the bottom. This floor was also filled with rooms for resting, but they were obviously much more luxurious. Each cabin was bigger than the ones on the lower floors. Only those with higher status should be qualified to live in these accommodations. Where there were soldiers, there definitely would be officers. There were even more female soldiers patrolling here. There were at least 7 teams, and added with the previous 2 teams of female soldiers, there were about 50 dead souls that were endlessly clashing with them now. This caused even those in the heaven tier to be unable to bear it. Those who had not formed hearts of martial arts had no means of resistance, and they all grabbed their heads and screamed out in pain. Ling Han had long since drew Zhu Xian'er, Rabbit, and the gold-seeking rat into the Black Tower. Hu Niu was a monster, so she was naturally unafraid. He himself had formed Sword Heart, so he was also not afraid. The side of the 5 sects was in terrible shape. In such a short period of time, they experienced serious casualties and injuries. Heaven tier elites similarly had their souls destroyed, each becoming a warm living corpse. This caused the 9th Underworld King and the others to show heated gazes, almost salivating. These were the freshest ingredients for refining corpses. Additionally, they were warm, so if they began refining corpse soldiers on the spot, they would definitely be able to express their fullest might. They even focused their eyes on the shattering void tier elites. Those could be refined to become corpse kings. Even if they were allies now, the members of the 5 sects still shuddered from their looks, wanting nothing more than to eliminate these people first, then consider the matter of looking for treasure. You don't mind if I take these bodies, right? It would be a waste to leave them to you, the 9th Underworld King said, finally no longer able to bear it. The corpses of heaven-tier elites could be refined to become third-tier gold-armored corpses. Only corpse kings were stronger than those. All the members of the 5 sects turned furious glares on him. That was going a bit too far, right? Making a demand for the corpses in front of their family members, and looking so impatient and heated, who could take it? Also, what did you mean by, "It would be a waste"? The dead naturally had to be buried and at rest. If they were to be refined into corpse soldiers by you and insulted, that would be madness. The members of the 5 sects hurriedly stored away the bodies. Anyways, non-living items could be stored inside spatial rings, so it would be no trouble to bring them along. As they advanced, they arrived at the central zone of this floor, and saw that a woman had appeared in front of them. She was seated, and there was a long table in front of her. She was similarly dressed in battle armor, but completely different from the other female soldiers. Her battle armor looked to be of a much higher grade. She even had a cape behind her, exuding a cold divine might. She was a female general. "Step down!" the female general commanded. "Yes." The 9 teams of female soldiers all answered respectfully, and stepped back. "After so many years have passed, I can still see all of you before vanishing. This can also be considered fate." The female general looked at all of them, and made a gesture of invitation. "I would like to invite you all to have some tea with me." Everyone exchanged looks. To be invited for a cup of tea with a dead soul, who would dare drink? "Is no one willing to drink tea with me?" the female general asked, smiling. Previously, the female soldiers were all stiff. They were only left with the thought to protect this ship. This was the obsession that supported them in not vanishing, but this female general seemed to still have her own will. This was too shocking. Ling Han thought for a moment, then said, "If Senior does not disdain my cultivation level for being too weak, I would be willing to share a cup of tea with Senior and have a nice chat." Chapter 839 Reincarnation. Chapter 839 Reincarnation. To drink tea with a ghost, what kind of courage would one need? Moreover, did you know what you were exactly drinking? It was something a ghost drank, and you actually dared to drink it as well. Weren't you worried you would become a ghost too? The others exchanged looks. They all thought that since Ling Han was willing to be a fool, they would just allow him to do so. They could take the chance to observe the situation as well. Previously, there were so many dead souls of the female soldiers that they could even threaten heaven-tier cultivators. Then was this female general even more powerful than that, and could she actually harm even shattering void-tier cultivators? In face of an unknown, no one dared to wander around randomly. After all, the leader of this divine ship could be shockingly powerful. "Ha ha ha, in my eyes, what difference exists among all of you? You are only just that bit stronger than ants," the female general said casually. "Sit." When they heard her say that, Zhuo Qifeng and the other 4 prodigies of the immortal realm all looked angered. They had all come from the immortal realm, so was it really appropriate for her to be so patronizing? Ling Han plopped down, a smile on his face. The reason he had done so was naturally because he had been urged on by Small Tower. Otherwise, being invited to drink tea with a ghost, just the thought was enough to cause chills to run down his spine. Though the Tsundere Tower had said many times that it wanted to change to another owner, that was only its stubborn mouth speaking. So far, it had always been helping Ling Han, so he believed this time was no exception. That female general poured tea for Ling Han. A stream of water flowed out of the teapot spout. He could even see that it was still steaming, and when the teacup was half full, the female general placed the teapot down. This sight was unfathomable to everyone. They had come out of the void, and everyone had died, but a cup of hot tea still could be poured out. This was too bizarre. Fuck, what kind of tea was that? Everyone stared at the cup of tea in front of Ling Han. Suddenly, everyone gave out a muffled humph. I saw the glint and flash of cold steel, a scene of massacre. I saw a flash of the future. I saw a sinister region of ghosts. Everyone witnessed a different scene, but without exception, the scene that they saw was incredibly terrifying, causing them to be covered with cold sweat as if they had just experienced a major illness. Setting aside those ordinary, shattering void-tier cultivators, even the strongest of this era such as Ma Duo Bao and Wu Gao Yuan could not help but shudder. Pa 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 pa. The two 18-eyed corpse kings were even worse. 7 of their eyes burst respectively, their aura instantly dropping dramatically. Obviously, their battle prowess had declined drastically. How terrifying. It was just a cup of tea, and they had only just taken one look, yet it had caused such an astonishing outcome. Just a look was enough to cause this, so would one still be alive after drinking it? Woo! Woo! The two great corpse kings lamented, and could not help but retreat. Their whole bodies were trembling, their skeletons swaying as if they were about to collapse at any moment. So scary! Everyone shook their heads. Even if someone held a sword to their necks, they would definitely not dare to drink this tea. If they did, they were definitely going to die. Ling Han! Ma Duobao called out. He did not want Ling Han to take risks, either. The latter had an incredibly bright future ahead of him. If Ma Duobao failed at splitting open the skies, he could still depend on Ling Han, but it was absolutely impossible for the 8 kings. Ling Han hesitated internally as well. This cup of tea was really too frightening, practically enough to terrify one to death. The female general did not rush him, and merely looked smilingly at Ling Han. Ling Han weighed the matter for a short while in his heart, but finally stretched out a hand, and said, "Senior, this cup of tea from you is a bit shocking, causing me to feel a bit anxious. However, it is a token of goodwill from Senior, and I have also accepted. Naturally, there is no reason for me to retreat halfway." He lifted the teacup, and took a small sip. Bitter! So damn bitter! Ling Han's expression instantly became very colorful. This bitterness was practically enough to kill. He just managed to stop himself from spitting out the tea, but with a pa-pa sound, his eyeballs actually popped right out of his eye sockets. They had popped out due to the extreme bitterness. Everyone was astonished. Merely in terms of toughness of physique, out of the people here, only Ma Duobao could match Ling Han. Yet this happened to even Ling Han, which meant that the same thing would happen to anyone else who drank this tea. Everyone thought, thank goodness I have not been the bird that pokes its head out one. Pa pa. Ling Han's ears fell off as well, followed by his nose. Ta 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 ta. His whole mouthful of teeth dropped out completely. His hair fell off in an instant as well, revealing a bald head. This was not the end either. His scalp cracked, revealing a golden skull, but multiple spiderweb-like cracks began appearing on these bones that were as strong as level 10 precious metal. Too terrifying. Such strong bones, yet they were shattered by the bitterness of the tea. Too bad, too bad. The 9th Underworld King could not help but feel it was very much a pity. If someone with such a strong physique was refined to become a corpse soldier, that would definitely mean the creation of a super corpse king, yet now, the physique had shattered by itself. That's good, we have one less future trouble. Someone smirked. Ling Han's physique was too tough. Even descended immortals might not be able to kill him, so if he died here and now, that would also be good. This tea was definitely the most poisonous substance in all history. Even a physique as strong as level 10 precious metal was not qualified to match the level of its venom. Hunyo had begun hopping up and down in her anxiety, but she had strangely not stepped forth, just as if she had sensed something. Ma Duobao and the 8 kings wanted to immediately step forth, but that female general only gave them a look, and an incredibly frightening aura instantly spread out. Pa pa pa. Ma Duobao and the 8 kings suddenly flopped down onto the ground, unable to catch their breath, so how could they still remain standing? Too shocking. This was definitely immortal-grade battle prowess, but why had it not drawn the suppression of the Eye of Tao? Perhaps, because it is only aura, there is no actual power circulating. An old antique guessed. But even if they knew this was only intimidation, so what? Just like the decree of spiritual infant tier could force spiritual pedestal tier cultivators to their knees, it was the same now. This female general was too powerful, and had far exceeded elites in the ordinary sense of the word. Could she be a heavenly body or even eternal river tier elite? Wu Gaoyuan and the other prodigies of the immortal realm all deduced secretly. The 5 sects had mountain, river, and sun moon tier elites, but they were definitely not as powerful as this. Ling Han's bones finally all shattered, his whole body becoming a pool of blood and flesh. Just looking at it was incredibly frightening. This was poison. A mere sip was enough to dissolve one completely. Everyone was stunned, and secretly thankful that it wasn't themselves. Ling Han was dead. Such a monstrous person actually died like that. This was too ordinary. Hu Niu, on the other hand, calmed down. She looked at Ling Han's shattered bones, excitement flickering in her eyes. The female general was the same. Looking at where Ling Han was seated, she nodded and said, "Quite fortunate indeed, to actually be able to withstand this reincarnation tea." As soon as she spoke, Ling Han's broken bones began to exude golden light. Uncountable shattered pieces were recombining, and very quickly, a human-shaped skeleton was reconstructed. What, this brat wasn't dead? Everyone was dumbstruck. He actually had all his bones shattered. How was it fair that he still didn't die from that? Reincarnation from life to death surpassed this life, the female general stated calmly. Ling Han's rate of reconstruction was gradually speeding up. His skeleton had formed, his blood and flesh growing, and he was currently reforming himself. Living from death, he definitely would be stronger than before. "We cannot allow him to live," an antique from the 5 sects said. He once again ignited his vigor, instantly reaching 14 stars in battle prowess. Then, he delivered a straight palm strike at Ling Han's head. Now was the crucial moment of Ling Han's reconstruction. It was the weakest time for his body. One blow would be enough to kill him. Ma Duo Bao and the 8 kings were all paralyzed, and unable to rescue him at all. Chapter 840 Straight Leap into Heaven Tier. Chapter 840 Straight Leap into Heaven Tier. Seeking death! That female general released a light humph. She did not even need to move a finger, and merely sent a look at that old antique. Pooh! That old antique suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, and collapsed, instantly losing all signs of life. One look, and it was enough to kill a shattering void tier elite with 14 stars of battle prowess. What kind of power was that? Fuck, where was the Eye of Tao? Come out quickly and suppress her. Battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier. It's not a physical attack, but a direct strike to the divine sense. Ma Duo Bao, Zhuo Qifeng, and the other ultimate elites could tell that this female general had not used any immortal level skill, thus, the natural Tao would naturally not suppress her. Additionally, if one could block an attack on the spiritual level, it would be blocked. If one could not, then a single blow would be enough. Thus, it would either be an instant kill, or the opponent could not be killed no matter what. There was no third possibility. There were so many people here, but whose spirit was strong enough to withstand an attack on the level of 20 stars of shattering void tier. No one, there was definitely not a single person that could do so. Thus, everyone kept their silence. If this female general wanted to kill them, most likely, everyone here would be eliminated. Even someone as strong as Ma Duo Bao would have to die grudgingly. His physical body possessed defenses as strong as level 10 precious metal, but could he block such a terrifying spiritual attack? If even he was unable to, then who else would dare to make a move? Golden light interwove all over Ling Han's body. Suddenly, his aura began to spike madly. 7th layer of the deity transformation tier, 8th, 9th. In a mere instant, he had reached the peak of the deity transformation tier, possessing the qualifications to break through to the heaven tier. Aside from Ling Han, no one else knew what he had experienced in this process of destruction and reconstruction. It was a circle of reincarnation. Under the effects of the bitter tea, he returned to his last life, and experienced a whole lifetime in its whole. However, he had not encountered the Black Tower, and lived all the way until 400 or so years old in this realm, and even married the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. But with the invasion of the immortal realm, he swore on his life to resist. Though he had entered into the shattering void tier, his battle prowess was far below his strength in this life. Ultimately, he died with a grudge. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden committed suicide after his death, and his 4 disciples also fought to their deaths alongside him. Strong and vigorous, yet also incredibly miserable. After that, he awakened from his reincarnation dream. In the eyes of others, this was only a short while, but for Ling Han, he had experienced again 400 years of time, causing him to feel like a chrysalis that had transformed into a butterfly, completing an astonishing metamorphosis. There was not a bit of change to his cultivation, but his spirit and mental state had advanced into the shattering void tier. Then, the bitter tea began to improve his physical body and raise his cultivation level. The reason that all this could happen so quickly was because there was a drop of indestructible true fluid that had taken effect in his body, so he had quickly completed the rebuilding of his body. Even the female general had not predicted this. In her opinion, whether Ling Han could survive this reincarnation would only be decided after at least 3 days' time. Ling Han had directly advanced into the heaven tier. His mental state and spirit had already advanced into the shattering void tier, so, naturally, it was impossible that he would not be able to control his sharply increased power, and with the effects of the bitter tea, he had already perfected his cultivation on the deity transformation tier to the highest level. With absolutely no reason to suppress his cultivation level, the natural result was breaking through, of course. For him, this was a familiar path, but it was also the last familiar stretch. After all, he had only advanced into the shattering void tier in his reincarnation dream. That was a change on the spiritual level and mental state, and not an actual breakthrough he had experienced physically. He had advanced into the heaven tier as his whole body shuddered. The others were stunned. He had broken through just like that. They had all seen very clearly previously. Ling Han was only in the 6th layer of the deity transformation tier, but in a mere instant, he had directly broken through to the heaven tier. This speed of upgrade was too shocking. That cup of tea was not a poison, but an ultimate treasure. All of a sudden, everyone had heated gazes, but with that female general overseeing things, who would dare step out to snatch it? But what stunned them all was that the liquid inside the teacup was quickly evaporating, and very quickly, the bottom could be seen in it, which caused everyone to lament quietly. However, there were also some that were secretly rejoicing. Since they themselves could not obtain it, they naturally did not want any other person to be able to. Even Ling Han had only drunk a mouthful. Ling Han abruptly opened his eyes. His eyes were filled with the bizarre shapes of the galaxy, but they returned to tranquility soon after. At first glance, they were incredibly ordinary, but upon closer examination, one would discover that his eyes were as gentle and mild as jade, and incomparably deep. The tea was gone? He had obviously merely taken a sip. Ling Han was also slightly bewildered. Reincarnation tea, a sip is equivalent to a single reincarnation. With your cultivation level, you can only take 1 sip. Otherwise, you would be trapped in your reincarnation, and eternally unable to break free, the female general said. The pity that Ling Han was feeling internally was instantly swept clean. He raised his clasped hands in her direction and said, "Many thanks for your help, senior." The female general smiled faintly and said, "You were the only one that dared to sit down and drink this tea, so this is your fateful opportunity. All right, the reincarnation tea is gone, so I can finally let go." She closed her eyes with a smile, and her body disappeared like a shattering mirror. She had let go of her lingering regret, so the dead soul would naturally dissipate. After she disappeared, the pressure naturally vanished completely as well. All of a sudden, everyone's eyes were focused on that teapot. Pun pun pun. They all pounced, and immediately began fighting over it. But very soon, they discovered that the teapot was already empty. Indeed, just like what the female general had said, the tea was gone, so she could finally let go. Everyone secretly lamented. Though there had only been half a cup of the reincarnation tea previously, with their ability, they would only be able to drink a mouthful. Half a cup would be enough for 7 or 8 of them to drink. This was a divine tea. Everyone hung their heads and stamped their feet. Just now, if they had just been a bit braver, then wouldn't they have been able to obtain an unprecedented fateful opportunity? It was not something as simple as Ling Han's cultivation level rising. Everyone could sense that there was an obvious difference about him, though they could not clearly pinpoint it. It was as if his whole person had been greatly improved on the life level. "This teapot is still hot!" someone exclaimed in a trembling voice. The others were stunned. This was really enough to scare them to death. The ship came out of the empty void, and who knew how many years had passed, yet the teapot was actually still hot. How strange was that? "Ling Han, you okay now?" Hu Niu asked delicately. Ling Han nodded, then smiled and said, "I'm fine." Was Niu worried? "A bit, just a little bit." Hu Niu formed a gap with her hands to indicate that she was indeed filled with confidence in Ling Han. Ling Han laughed heartily. He looked within himself, and could not help but grin. He had experienced a very great change. His spirit had become incredibly firm, far exceeding any ordinary shattering void tier cultivators. His physical body had been tough in the first place, and now that his spirit had also improved, it had compensated for his last shortcoming. "Sword Heart has actually reached major accomplishment," he said to himself. Though he had not reached the level of a perfected Sword Heart, he was but a hair's breadth away. "My Tan brother, you are indeed shockingly lucky," Ma Duobao said ruefully. There were so many people here, yet only Ling Han dared to sit down and drink the tea. This was his fateful opportunity, who asked the others to choose to give it up. Yet Ling Han knew that he would really not dare be so reckless without the protection of the Black Tower. This was the true basis of his confidence. He was not going to say this, of course. Since the reincarnation tea was finished, they continued their way upwards. When they arrived at the 4th level, the rooms here were even bigger. But looking at the way they were arranged, they did not look like bedrooms, but rather something akin to conference rooms. Similarly, there were also 5-man teams of female soldiers patrolling here, and they launched attacks in their direction. Chapter 841 Who is she? Chapter 841 Who is she? Ling Han discovered that his current spirit was very firm, and the barrage of attacks from the dead souls could no longer affect him as easily. In the past, his spirit could endure about 8 or 10 years of this. Now, he would be unafraid even in 100 or 1,000 years. After experiencing a reincarnation cycle, his spirit was stronger than even those of the majority of shattering void tier elites. The space on this floor was especially huge. Aside from conference rooms, they also saw some cannons. Closely interwoven patterns covered them, and a mere look would cause shivers to run up one's spine. There was a bone-deep, chilling fear to them. Unfortunately, these cannons had been destroyed. "This must be a godly metal." Everyone stared at those destroyed cannons. They had been forged from metal, and since they could be used here, how astonishing would the materials used to forge these cannons be? They all wanted to take these cannons, but they had no means of approaching them at all. Those patterns were too frightening. A shattering void tier elite walked quickly, but just as he did, he was shattered into pieces without a sound. That was the might of the patterns. Even if they were not active, they were a deadly weapon. They could not be taken. They all felt like they were about to be driven mad. What kind of treasure was that? It was godly metal, yet they could only stare blindly at it. It almost made them want to throw up blood. Additionally, with how destructive these patterns were, if one could collect them, they in themselves would be a deadly weapon. Killing shattering void tier elites would be child's play. So what if they coveted it? They could only leave. Another floor up, and they had reached the deck. Though they had previously leaped and soared, wanting to board the ship directly from the deck, not only had none of them succeed, they even had no idea what the situation was like on the deck. No matter how high they flew, they could not see it clearly, which was very bizarre. This time, they finally reached the deck from the inside, and were able to have a clear look. How shocking! The moment they were on the deck, they all exclaimed in astonishment. Was this place a battlefield from hell? They saw that there were corpses lying all over the deck. Some of them were human, and there were also half-human, half-beast creatures. They had wings and horns, completely inky black all over. If there was no moon at night, they would even accidentally bump right into them. Blood pooled all over the whole deck. There were detached limbs and heads ripped off. They exuded a terrifying killing aura, which solidified and hung in the air. But the most terrifying thing was a colossal jar placed in the center of the deck. It was filled with detached heads, and they were all horned half-humans. Their eyes were still bright, emitting a terrifying pressure. With only a single look, all of them felt as if their bodies would explode at any moment. Thus, they hurriedly lowered their heads, and did not dare to look a second time. What kind of creatures were these? They could visualize this huge vessel encountered an attack, and both sides should have died in battle. Furthermore, the shock waves created from the battle were so large that they directly tore a hole in space, and entered into the empty void. It wasn't until Ma Duo Bao slashed open space that this huge ship finally reappeared. This was too frightening. Majority of the things on board the ship had vanished, which meant that the ship's defenses were no longer effective. Yet, these corpses were still there, and even looked like they had just died recently, which showed how powerful these beings had been. Even if they were dead, the empty void could not destroy their bodies. Ling Han cast his gaze afar, and could see there was a woman standing proudly at the ship's bow. The cloak behind her had stretched out for almost 10 meters, and she wore a golden battle armor underneath it. It was very tight-fitting, and perfectly showed off her figure. They only saw her back, yet it was enough to intoxicate both the heart and spirit. Was she a ghost as well? Everyone proceeded with caution. The corpses here were too powerful, and they were afraid that a single touch would be enough to kill them. How vast could a kilometer-long deck be? Very soon, they arrived at the ship's bow, and stood behind that woman. Hong, her cloak moved. The woman turned around. All of a sudden, the skies changed color, and it was like the whole world was going to collapse. What kind of ultimate elite was this? She had merely turned around, and it could cause such change in the environment. So beautiful! After that woman had turned around, everyone looked enraptured. She was a woman with peerless talent, and furthermore had a kind of indescribable bearing of nobility. Those like Zhu Xian'er and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden were no inferior to her in beauty, but if they stood beside her, they would pale in comparison as if they were mere village girls. A deity from the 9 heavens. In that instant, they all had this thought in their heads. No matter how old they were, the hearts of the men were filled with adoration, and even those women whose hearts were like still water could feel a ripple in their hearts. She was attractive to both men and women. Yet Ling Han instantly felt his limbs freeze. The appearance of this woman was exactly the same as the human-shaped spirit base in Hunyo's Dantian. A spirit base looking like a human was incredibly bizarre by itself, but now, an even more bizarre thing had appeared. There was actually a real person that looked the same. Hunyo had said before that she had a kind of familiar feeling about this huge ship, just as if she had been here before. And now, there appeared a woman that looked exactly like the spirit base inside her. If he still thought that there was absolutely no link between her and this godly vessel, that would really be strange. After a long while, someone pointed at an object floating in the empty air in front of the woman, and exclaimed in shock, "What is that? It seems like an egg?" It indeed is an egg. Its surface seems to be covered by patterns, but I can't see anything at all. That would be a godly egg then. If we eat it, would we immediately become an ultimate elite on the immortal level? More and more people turned their attention to the object in front of the woman. They all knew that this woman was already dead, and what was left was merely a dead spirit. No matter how beautiful or how moving her bearing was, did it matter? These people were all in the shattering void tier, and they very quickly came back to themselves. Becoming stronger was their true, unchanging pursuit. Hunyo could not help but be distracted, and exclaimed, "Someone is calling Nyo." So strange, Nyo cannot control herself." She raised her foot, and walked forwards. "Hunyo!" Ling Han stretched out his hand, wanting to hold Hunyo. Yet, he immediately felt a pain in his chest, and his arms started to hang down helplessly. Step by step, Hunyo walked to stand in front of that woman, and stretched out a hand to grasp that egg. That indeed was an egg. No matter how they looked at it, it looked like an egg. When her small hand came into contact with it, that egg immediately exuded brilliant light. Then, with a shio, it sank into Hunyo's chest and disappeared completely. "You have finally come," the woman said gently. Her voice was as melodious as if it came directly from the heavens. "Who are you? Does Neo know you?" Hunyo mumbled. "I am your last life, you are my next life, and from now on, you are the complete you," the woman said. Her figure began to fade, ready to disappear. Guarding this egg. Was that her dying wish? "Neo is Ling Han's, not yours," Hunyo immediately rebutted. "The godly egg! The godly egg!" Everyone's eyes were fixed on Hunyo. The egg was definitely the absolutely most precious object on the whole ship. The reincarnation tea was already so incredible, so what kind of benefits could this godly egg bring? "Hand it over! Or die!" The members of the Thousand Corpse sect and the 5 sects all surrounded Hunyo, their killing intent spiking. That woman opposite them was about to dissipate, so they had no need to take her to heart. Hunyo was merely a little girl in the heaven tier, so how could they not be able to deal with her? "Do you have to force me to kill even at the end?" the woman that was about to dissipate asked. She stretched out a dainty hand, and with a palm strike, pa 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 pa, those elites that were at the front all exploded. Wu Gaoyuan, who was brandishing the mountain and river axe at the front, also bore the brunt of the attack, exploded in an instant. In front of her, 18 stars of shattering void tier was not even enough. Immortal level strength! Zui Qifeng and the other 3 prodigies from the immortal realm all stopped in shock, looking incredibly fearful. Hong, the Eye of Tao appeared abruptly, and blinked above the vessel. Finally, this guy was drawn out. Chapter 842 The Eye of Heavenly Tao fled. Chapter 842 The Eye of Heavenly Tao fled. The aura that woman released in that single instant had completely surpassed the shattering void tier, and caused the whole realm to tremble. It had even radiated out of this realm, and was spreading out towards even farther regions. The Eye of Heavenly Tao appeared. It represented the will of this realm, and would definitely not allow any being that would affect the balance of this realm to exist. This woman was going to be expelled. However, she was a dead soul in the first place, so there was no difference whether she was going to be expelled or not. In the first place, she was just about to dissipate. The Eye of Heavenly Tao blinked its huge eye, and a tear into the empty void immediately appeared beside the woman. It quickly enlarged, preparing to swallow her. As long as she was pulled into the empty void, then she would be completely expelled out of this realm. As for where she would once reappear, that was not going to be a concern for the Eye of Heavenly Tao. "If I want to leave, I naturally will." The woman waved a hand, and the rip that had just opened up into the empty void was immediately smoothed over as if it had never appeared in the first place. Everyone was dumbstruck. The members of the 5 sects and Thousand Corpse sect were all very clear that no matter how strong the immortals were, they would not be able to match the powers of a whole realm. If they wanted to enter into this realm, they had to suppress their powers, and the moment they released powers on the immortal level, they would be expelled, unable to remain in this plane. This was an ironclad rule. Thus, all those years ago, the alternative dragon managed to wreak havoc unhindered, and even descended immortals could not deal with him. But now, the Eye of Heavenly Tao had appeared to chase her off, but she actually managed to still stay behind. How powerful was that? Unfair, this was too unfair. Everyone was trembling. This level of power had exceeded their understanding. Only Ling Han was prepared for this. Previously, Hunyo had chased off the Eye of Heavenly Tao with a shout, and she had an incomparably intimate relation with this woman, so the latter could only be even stronger. The Eye of Heavenly Tao represented the will of the world. It by itself was emotionless. It stared at the woman, and once again launched an attack. Another rip into the empty void opened up. Humph! The woman seemed to be angered, and casually delivered a smack. Pa! The Eye of Heavenly Tao was instantly struck back, and Ling Han, after activating the Eye of Truth, had seen it even clearer. A wound had appeared on the eye of Heavenly Tao, and there was blood seeping out. Dark clouds swirled, and the world lamented. The eye of Heavenly Tao had been wounded, and that was a failure of the entire realm. This. Even the eye of Heavenly Tao could be wounded? This was an absolutely invincible power, and she could do as she willed in this realm. Who else would be able to stop her? One had to know that she currently was only a dead soul. Then what about when she had been alive? How strong had she been then? Yet, such an existence had also died in battle. Just what kind of enemies had she faced? Ling Han could not help but feel a shudder in his heart, worried for Hu Niu's sake. That woman said that she was Hu Niu's last life, and Hu Niu was her next life. That also meant that if her powerful enemies had not died, Hu Niu would need to face such a strong enemy too. When immortals descended to the lower realm, at least beings like the five sects and Yi Shuang Shuangthi would be suppressed by the realm powers, yet this woman could actually injure the eye of Heavenly Tao. Furthermore, it was when she was in dead soul form. This meant that she had naturally been even more awesome in her life. Following this line of deduction, how powerful would her enemies be? The eye of Heavenly Tao blinked in the skies, causing ripples in the realm like water boiling, yet in a mere flash, it had disappeared from sight. Did this mean something like, "I am not going to interfere anymore"? They were all dumbfounded. Even the eye of Heavenly Tao was not a match? Damn, this woman was so strong she could defy nature. They were all shaking. Such a powerful being had completely exceeded their expectations. "You will have to tread the path of your future on your own," the woman said, looking at Hu Niu with gentle eyes. Her body was continuing to dissipate. Finally, she had disappeared completely without a trace. Everyone else was looking at Hu Niu. At that moment, no one dared to make a move who knew if that woman would return. Previously, she was also dissipating, yet she had killed an elite of 18 stars of shattering void tier as easily as picking out an object from her bag. She had even scared off the eye of Heavenly Tao. Hong, long, the whole godly ship was wailing, and beginning to crumble. As it crumbled, the godly wood that could not be damaged even with the frenzied attacks of the shattering void tier elites began breaking into pieces. Even those damaged cannons were the same. In only a single instant, the ship had completely disappeared, leaving behind only a pile of ash. It was as if its mission was merely to travel out of the empty void and hand that egg over to Hu Niu. Perhaps it was not coincidence that the godly ship had appeared here. It might have been drawn out by Hu Niu. Ma Duobao picked up the mountain and river axe lying on the ground, smiled calmly, and said, "Let's continue the battle." Hong, he no longer kept any reservations, and the patterns on his body lit up consecutively, interweaving into a brilliant killing formation. The number one killing formation in this world that could eliminate even gods. Chen Wenshi and Zhu Qifang released terrible screams, having been suddenly pulled in by the killing formation, and were instantly eliminated. Though the spirit tools they had been wielding before had been bathed in immortal blood, and were incredibly frightening, they were completely suppressed after entering the huge ship. Their immortal traits had disappeared, and now, with Ma Duobao's sudden outburst, he had instantly eliminated two powerful beings. The 8 kings also began attacking the elites of the 5 sects, furious like wolves and tigers. This was the final battle. The 5 sects lost, and even the help of the 1000 Corpse sect was useless. Who would have imagined that Ma Duobao was actually the number one killing formation of the world, with battle prowess strong enough to kill even gods? In the immortal realm, that would only be merely an empty threat, but here, where the immortals would be suppressed by the realm powers, it made killing gods possible. Moreover, Xiao Miaoyan and Yang Guan both had 18 stars of battle prowess. After an 18-eyed corpse king had been killed as well, the shattering void tier elites all attempted to flee recklessly. After igniting their life force, their speed was astonishingly fast. However, though they managed to flee, practically none below shattering void tier managed to. Aside from a limited few that had been taken away by the shattering void tier elites in their flight, the others either died in battle or surrendered. The 5 sects' rule over the middle state, and their influence over the 4 regions, was thus brought to an end. Some still managed to flee. Ling Han shook his head. Xiao Miyan and Guan Yang both had 18 stars of Shattering Void tier of battle prowess, and aside from Ma Duo Bao, no one else could suppress them. If they missed this chance to defeat them all in one go, in the future, it would be them in the open and their enemies in secret, and they would be impeded. 18 stars of Shattering Void tier of battle prowess would be enough to stir up trouble. My Tan brother, now that the world is conquered, a few remaining clowns would not be able to cause any big ripples. If they dare appear, I will definitely kill them. Ma Duo Bao laughed. When we split open the skies, I will invite you to join us again so that we can all witness this magnificent feat together. All right. Ling Han nodded. He also had to observe Hunyo closely. What kind of massive effects would that egg bring to the little girl? They split up and bade their farewells before they respectively turned around and left. At the first instant, Ling Han brought Hunyo into the Black Tower, and had Small Tower conduct a detailed examination on her. I can't. Small Tower shook its head. I can't do it with my current abilities. I have to first recover to my complete form. Ling Han could not help but frown, and asked Hunyo. Nyo, do you feel any discomfort or anything off? Hunyo pondered earnestly, then nodded with utmost seriousness. She said, Yes. Where? I'm hungry. This glutton. Chapter 843 Staging a Comeback. Chapter 843 Staging a Comeback. That egg was obviously extremely rare, and its preciousness far exceeded the reincarnation teas. However, it turned out that there wasn't even the slightest change in Hunyo, which made Ling Han utterly puzzled. In the midst of such puzzlement, Ling Han returned to the North region. At this time, the 4 regions had been unified under the banner of the Great Ling Empire, and as policies beneficial to the nation and people's welfare were passed down, the hearts of the people were quickly united. Ling Han gave it a try. Upon condensing the power of the nation, his battle prowess actually reached an amazing 9 stars of Shattering Void tier. The battle prowess of Shattering Void tier was too strong. Therefore, it could be said that the addition of the power of the nation allowed for the attainment of 9 stars of Shattering Void tier, and the battle prowess of Ling Han himself could be disregarded. And yet, the reason he was able to become so powerful was because his physique was extremely strong. If it was any other heaven tier cultivator, the addition of power of the nation could only allow the attainment of battle prowess of 20 stars of heaven tier, and couldn't be upgraded any further. Otherwise, the body would collapse first. However, Ling Han was different. His body was as strong as level 10 precious metal, enough to bear the battle prowess of 9 stars of Shattering Void tier. And this was already near his body's limits. It was no wonder that Ma Duo Bao had no intention of expanding the nation's territory and increasing the number of people under his jurisdiction. His body was also similar to level 10 precious metal in toughness. At most, he could only attain a 10 stars increase in battle prowess. Therefore, it would be meaningless for him to further expand the territory. As the saying went, too much was as bad as not enough. Ling Han did not have such a worry. If he advanced into the Shattering Void tier, he could still improve his body by another level to reach the stage of godly metal. In that case, what would be the limit of power of the nation that he could bear? 20 stars? 30 stars? 50 stars? Perhaps the will of all the realm's people could be added upon him alone, without any fear that this would cause his body to explode. Only now did Ling Han realize the importance of having a tyrannically strong body. And when it was combined with the power of the nation, it made him invincibly powerful. Of course, this was also because he had cultivated the Indestructible Heaven Scroll, which allowed him to have such a body. Power such as this could not be duplicated. Currently, his spirit was extremely powerful. His mental state had even reached the Shattering Void tier in advance, allowing him to perfectly control the prowess of 9 stars of Shattering Void tier. His comprehension of martial arts also saw amazingly rapid progress. When one had reached his cultivation level, the comprehension of martial arts equaled the comprehension of Tao, the strength of the spirit, and the improvement of mental state. This allowed him to have absolutely no bottleneck in breaking through. He was only required to constantly increase the accumulation of origin power, thus, advancing through the levels was naturally done at lightning speed. In this way, it was very likely that he could charge into the shattering void tier within a year. The Rain Emperor and Murongqin came back with a large number of people. Now that the 5 great sects had been demolished, it was naturally impossible for the Restore Heaven Academy to continue operating. These people were the elites of elites, and the geniuses among geniuses. The 5 great sects had intended to bring them into the immortal realm as hired thugs, which showed that they all had great potential, and were worthy to be nurtured. The thing that Linghan lacked the least now was cultivation resources. The Purple Moon Empire was spreading the truth about the reckoning everywhere. In collaboration, Linghan also announced the truth to all of the 4 regions so that everyone would know that in order to be rid of the fate of being used to make the realm pill, the only option would be to split open the sky. In the beginning, most people were naturally skeptical. After all, they had been brainwashed by the 5 great sects for more than 10,000 years. However, as time passed by, more and more evidence was brought up, and naturally more people had chosen to believe it. The more united the people's hearts were, the stronger the power of the nation. With the help of the Rain Emperor, Helian Sun Shui's pressure was greatly reduced. As he had also been an emperor for so many years, he was naturally shrewd and ruthless in handling the nation's affairs, and was not at all inferior to her. Ma Duobao had agreed with Linghan that he would use 1 year's time to make preparations, after which he would split open the sky. Therefore, Linghan had intended to use this 1 year to properly cultivate. If Ma Duobao was able to split open the sky, that would naturally be great, and he would bask in the glory. Otherwise, he would have to step up to the task. This was the only way out for the lower realm. Linghan was prepared to change his cultivation technique after a certain period of time. It was obtained not from the sea race, but from the 5 great sections. After all, the cultivation techniques of the sea race were only suited for the sea race. When the 5 great sects were demolished, Ma Duobao very generously allowed Linghan to enter into one of the sects to select a cultivation technique. Linghan picked the extreme young technique, which was maybe not the most suitable for him, but still better than the rest. Most importantly, Linghan was only required to advance into the shattering void tier, and that was all. Upon entering the immortal realm, there naturally would be godly techniques for him to cultivate. Therefore, he ignored the fact that his cultivation speed at the shattering void tier was slightly slower. There were still some people of the 5 great sects who had escaped. However, they were currently in fright and considered as target of scorn, so how would they dare to come out? 3 months had passed, and everything was calm, while Linghan's cultivation was also skyrocketing. He had already entered the 3rd layer of the heaven tier. His body arts had also improved significantly. However, Linghan believed that if Xiao Miaoyan and the others reappeared, the target would be him. No matter how brave, they wouldn't dare to go to find Ma Duobao. He was the number 1 killing formation, after all. It would be a trip of no return for them. Thus, he could only be dealt with by true immortals. They had communicated with the 5 sects of the immortal realm through a special channel, and reported the matter regarding the godly vessel. It was believed that people from the immortal realm would come. That woman's power exceeded the common sense. She had to be supremely powerful in the immortal realm. Then, how precious the treasure she had guarded with her life would be. Therefore, Linghan thought that he and Hu Niu would become the main target of the 5 sects' attacks. In addition, the 1,000 Corpse sect was expected to be eager to make a move. The reason why they had not done so was because they weren't sure whether Ma Duobao was deliberately using Linghan as a bait to lure them out. Once again, another month had passed, and what was to come finally came. Xiao Miaoyan and Guanyang appeared, and with one sword strike, the defensive barrier formed by the totem immediately collapsed. These 2 people forcefully entered, looking murderous. "Linghan, you had better come out now!" they both shouted. "If you still don't come out, we will slaughter everyone in the imperial capital, and then annihilate 1 city every day. Can you stand by and watch so many people die for your sake?" "I cannot!" Linghan trod on air, and stood on the same height as Xiao Miaoyan and Guanyang, while his face bore a confident smile. I have come, but the ending will not be what you think. Rather, it will be me taking down both of you. Ha! Xiao Miyan and Guan Yang were both laughing. They had already ascertained the location of Ma Duo Bao. If the other party wanted to come over and help, it would take at least 3 days. Wouldn't 3 days be enough for them to kill a cultivator of the heaven tier over a few hundred times? Hence, they weren't in a hurry to take action. Of course, they wouldn't be intentionally wasting time, either. Where did such confidence of yours come from? Xiao Miaoyan said coldly, exuding anger. Being the pride of the immortal realm, she actually became like a street rat having to go into hiding upon descending to the lower realm. How could she accept such humiliation? Now, she intended to take out her resentment on Ling Han. Had the latter not intervened, the Purple Moon Empire would have already lost their bet, and wouldn't be able to make a move within 100 years. With 100 years' time, the 5 sects of the immortal realm should have already finished setting up the channel to the lower realm. So what of the world's #1 killing formation? Even though he couldn't be killed, he could be trapped in exile. They'd let him watch the creatures of the entire realm be refined into an alchemical pill. Hence, her hatred for Ling Han even exceeded that for Ma Duo Bao. Ling Han did not answer. He just gazed into the distance and said, Asura Demon Emperor. Since you have come, why do you hide yourself? Hey, you're just a mere little cultivator of the heaven tier. How did you discover me? The Asura Demon Emperor revealed his appearance in the distance, a puzzled and astonished expression on his face. Chapter 844 Capturing the Asura Demon Emperor. Chapter 844 Capturing the Asura Demon Emperor. Ling Han smiled nonchalantly and said, You practically reek of evil, so how hard can it be to locate you? I can sniff you out from 100 li. This, of course, was just talk in reality. It was because he had control of the power of the nation. If he willed it, the entire nation's every move could be monitored through the totems over the various cities. It was just that manpower was limited. He could not be distracted or have nothing better to do than to check up on other people's private life. However, with his family and friends residing in the imperial capital, he naturally had it under his control. Hun, just a puny heaven-tier warrior, you don't even know how wide the gap between us is. I, for one, would like to hear what capabilities you have to make it out of here alive. Xiao Miaoyan sneered. She despised Ling Han to the core. Kid, this woman's looks are not bad. Catch her for Lord Rabbit to serve as a maid. Rabbit shouted sneakily from below. Xiao Miaoyan immediately flew into a rage, but as her glance swept over Rabbit, she could not refrain from inadvertently asking. A descendant of Zongqingyi? What Zongqingyi? You ought to call him ancestor, snapped Rabbit at once. Xiao Miaoyan's pretty face twitched, but she surprisingly no longer refuted. Zongqingyi was also an exceedingly outstanding figure in the immortal realm, hence, the 5 sects would not lay their hands on his descendants. Otherwise, Rabbit's bloodline would have gone extinct long ago. She paid no heed to it, and kept staring at Ling Han as she said, Although a physique of level 10 precious metal is strong, as long as it falls into my hands, there are plenty of means to refine you. That does sound kinda scary. Ling Han guffawed with hearty laughter. The lot of you cruelly harm the living beings of the lower realm, being maniacal to the extent of refining a whole realm into an alchemical pill. Today, I will slay the lot of you, and sever your heads to offer as sacrifices to our ancestors. Kid, don't. Leave that woman for Lord Rabbit to serve as a maid. That man also can be used as a mount for Lord Rabbit. It would be best if you could leave both. Rabbit interjected again. Xiao Miaoyan naturally directly ignored Rabbit, and said, You lot gathered spiritual herbs and killed demonic beasts, don't tell me that is not maniacal? Ha ha! Ling Han laughed coldly. To actually compare beings of the same race as yourself to demonic beasts, I see you are cold-blooded to the extreme. Same race? Guan Yang swept his eyes across the entire imperial capital disdainfully, then asked in return, Are you guys worthy of it? There was nothing much to say anymore. Well, bring it on. Today, don't even think of running away, the 3 of you. What perfect timing to get rid of a huge trouble. Ling Han retorted frostily. Xiao Miuyan and Guanyang both possessed battle prowess of 18 stars of Shattering Void tier, undoubtedly being the largest threat. Getting rid of them now, the rest would not be much of a trouble. The 8 kings were more than capable of taking care of it.
You talk as if you are very powerful.
The Asura Demon Emperor scoffed. At the same time, he felt great displeasure in his heart. He and Xiao Miuyan's group were not together. Rather, he had arrived in the vicinity of the imperial capital much earlier, and was waiting for an opportunity to capture either Ling Han or Hu Niu. Seeing Xiao Miuyan and her companion appear, the idea of taking advantage of them occurred to him to use them as cover to stealthily come over. Yet, he was unexpectedly exposed by Ling Han's shout. Ling Han let his piercing gaze run over Xiao Miuyan and Guanyang, completely ignoring the Asura Demon Emperor, which made the latter nearly mad with fury. Back in the day, he was also one of the super elites who struck fear into the whole lower realm. Then, at the cost of countless deaths, he was divided into 9 parts to suppress him. Yet now, Ling Han regarded him as nothing. Damn it, if it was not that his level had dropped sharply, and for his being assigned an important mission, he would have burst forth with immortal level power to kill off Ling Han now, come hell or high water.
Small tower!
Ling Han called out softly in his heart. The black tower immediately channeled forth energy into him, and his strength instantly soared. In addition, he drew out power of the nation, making his strength rise further.
What?
Xiao Miuyan and the others all cried out in alarm at the same time. How come Ling Han seemed to have changed into a totally different person in a flash? How did the feel of this kind of energy cause them to shudder involuntarily? Even those with the battle prowess of 18 stars of Shattering Void tier were shuddering, so just what kind of changes actually took place in Ling Han's body? Ling Han gave a snort, and drew out the Revere Life Sword. With a jerk of his hand, this #1 killing sword was immediately activated, emitting infinite brilliance. Now that Ling Han had truly achieved the strength of the Shattering Void tier, he naturally fully released this sword's power. I don't believe! Xiao Miuyan denounced him loudly. A pair of huge wings sprouted from her back, and with a light flap, her energy was immediately heightened to a great extent. Wielding a blood-red treasured sword, she charged to meet Ling Han head-on. She circulated her bloodline, and raised the level of her battle prowess to the utmost. This was the battle prowess of 18 stars of Shattering Void tier. Without using her bloodline, her battle prowess was only 16 to 17 stars. Hong! The 2 swords clashed, causing an epic burst of amazing light rays. The sword she shot straight up into the vast sky, and again a wide patch of stars and constellations took the brunt of it as they fell in profusion from the impact. Immediately following this, amid the mass of light that burst forth, a person was seen being catapulted through it, like a cannonball being shot, heavily smashing into the distant mountains and immediately vanishing there. Hong, long, a mountain peak collapsed, issuing a loud noise and causing huge tremors to course through the ground. Guanyang stared dumbly. He could see clearly that the person who flew out just now was precisely Xiao Miuyan. This. As strong as Xiao Miuyan was, she also could not stop Ling Han's sword? What kind of battle prowess was this? The Asura Demon Emperor's body was also trembling too scary. Another monster attaining the battle prowess of 20 stars of Shattering Void tier finally appeared. This was indeed the pinnacle of humanity. Even he, an unusual being from the netherworld, might be killed. Run! Asura Demon Emperor's fighting intent immediately vanished, and he only wanted to sneak away now. This turn of events was something he never would have envisioned when he first met Ling Han. To think that there would actually be a day that he would lose his guts from being terrified by Ling Han. Ling Han drew up his long sword. Xiao Miuyan had actually fought him forcefully head-on. Wasn't that courting death? Originally, with her battle prowess of 18 stars of Shattering Void tier, it would be decent enough for her to contend with him for a few rounds, yet she persisted to fight him head-on. Thus, she was naturally inflicted with heavy injuries in just one move. With the energy channeled from the Black Tower and the addition of the power of the nation, his strength has already reached 20 stars of Shattering Void tier. Note that it was strength that had reached 20 stars of Shattering Void tier without having to use any secret arts at all. Any random strike of his already represented the strongest in this world. Then, if he circulated the 3 styles of black origin, or perhaps the earth overturning seal and other such, what kind of extent would his battle prowess reach? No wonder that the 5 sects wanted to draw Ma Duo Bao out from the Purple Moon Empire for another fight to the death. Ma Duo Bao with the addition of the power of the nation would really match the battle prowess of a god, a battle prowess of immortal grade that wasn't allowed to exist by the laws of heaven and earth in this realm. Wonderfully? Ling Han smiled coldly, striking his sword towards the Asura Demon Emperor. Pooh! The Asura Demon Emperor's body immediately collapsed to pieces, without even a slight doubt. Now, what did one with battle prowess of 15 stars of Shattering Void tier make in the face of Ling Han? For sure, he would be dead in one blow. However, the Asura Demon Emperor would not die so easily, though the body had already been shattered to pieces. A gust of black chi actually floated out, unceasingly intertwining as if forming some kind of body, but it was not at all firm. He was already without a form originally, rather, he evolved from the demonic chi of primal chaos. Ling Han struck again with his sword. The demonic chi was chopped into 2, but it very quickly fused back together again as if owning an undying body. Ha ha ha! I am transformed from the demonic chi of primal chaos, and thus an existence that would not die eternally. You want to kill me? It is still 1,000,000 years too early for you. The Asura Demon Emperor transmitted this message through his divine sense. Since his body was no more, he was naturally unable to convey it through speech. Ling Han snorted, and his figure charged right over. The sword heart stirred, and abruptly attacked the Asura Demon Emperor. Ah! The divine sense of the Asura Demon Emperor immediately gave out a horrible shriek. The sword heart, perfected, indeed could slay souls, its effect especially striking when used on this kind of evil demon. Taking advantage of the split second of his divine sense being temporarily disconnected, Ling Han stretched out his hand and grabbed the Asura Demon Emperor, then put him into the Black Tower. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.